Hey guys, welcome to Fanfic Fanatics. So in today's video we are gonna see, what if badass Deku fell in love with Melissa, part 2. Before starting, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you are interested in MHA fanfictions. This story is Hero of Courage, Fulcrum by TheHinokami. Now without wasting any more time, let's dive in. Third Pav. Gang Orc was sitting in his office when a sidekick ran into his office without knocking. It annoyed him, but they never did it before. The sidekick words then make him pale. "Sir, the boys just came over the radio and called in an earthquake being caused by a villain on their patrol. The buildings were shaking and they reported buildings starting to fall. We need to get as many people in that area now as to start rescue operations," stated the sidekick, and then Gang Orc started yelling orders as he walked out of his office. He told them to alert the government and all agencies in that area and any hero that could get there. He then asked for the location of the boys' last known location, since the operator said that the radios weren't working for anyone inside the destruction zone for some reason. "Must be a quirk doing the jamming," Gang Orc said as he started to head out to the site of the destruction. Gang Orc was shocked at the level of the destruction. Blocks upon blocks were all destroyed and leveled. Some buildings stood, but they still had a lot of damage and could fall at any time. Gang Orc started to issue orders to any hero that was on site, since he was the highest ranked hero currently. After the basic orders were given out, it had already been 30 minutes since he arrived on site, and it took him 30 minutes to arrive, to begin with. Damn it, already an hour wasted, and I doubt the boys will be anywhere near their last known location, but I can only try and search for them, Gang Orc thought as he got moving. He took some of the sidekicks from his agency and got searching. Another entire hour passed and he still never found them. He left the sidekicks and decided to go check in with the medical tents all around the edge of the description to see if any tent had spotted them. As he arrived at one tent, he received a phone call from Ua. "Damn it. I wanted to find them before they called," he thought as he answered the phone. It was Nezu. "Gang Orc, I'm calling about the boys, since their patrol route should have been in the area of destruction that the news is reporting. We've tried their phones but are getting no answer. Where are they?" Nezu asked, sounding tense. Gang Orc understood why. They were his students and the sole members of 1A. Gang Orc could only tell him that the boys were the ones to report it right as it happened, and they lost communication soon after, since something is jamming the radio waves inside the destruction. He only is able to talk since he is current. "Why outside the destruction? I'm trying to ask the medical tents if anyone has seen them bring anyone back and re-enter the zone. Currently, it's been 2 hours since I've last heard from them," Gang Orc stated, and Nezu thanked him and told him to keep Ua updated so they could inform the families. Another hour passed of Gang Orc searching when he received an alert from another hero that his boys were spotted heading towards a medical tent on the north side. As such, Gang Orc ran and never stopped running until he reached it. He arrived right as they did and he was devastated. He didn't need an answer to tell based on Izuku and their looks. Izuku may have been smiling, but the eyes betrayed him. They were like he was dead inside. He asked what happened, and then before Izuku could answer, he collapsed. "No, don't die Izuku, you can't die as well," Gang Orc thought, since he already knew by the looks of the other two that they were dead and gone. The boy was taken away in an ambulance to the nearest hospital for heroes that specialized in battle wounds. The civilians stopped Gang Orc from leaving and told him what happened. Why? Why God did it have to be them? Gang Orc thought as he traded information with the old man that told him what happened. He was proud of the boys, and he would live with the regret of losing them for the rest of his life. He just ended Izuku to survive, but even if he lived physically, would he survive mentally knowing his brothers in arms had died while he lived? 6 Gang Orc got to his car and drove after the ambulance. He called Nezu on the Bluetooth system in the car. "Do you have news, Gang Orc?" Nezu asked. Gang Orc didn't know how to explain it all. The only thing he could say was, "I'm sorry. Get to 4X hospital." He then hanged the call up. He didn't know if Izuku was going to make it to the hospital alive or not, and he didn't want to give them false hope of him making it there. He also didn't know how to explain it. While Gang Orc was dealing with his thoughts and driving, the UA staff had been sitting in the staff meeting room for the past 3 or so hours waiting to hear any news on the boys. They knew Inko and the other parents were at the Midoriya's home waiting for the news. Nezu had called all of the staff to be present at UA since none of them could really do anything currently except 13, who was a rescue hero, but they weren't in town currently. As such, Nezu, Recovery Girl, Lunch Rush, Hound Dog, Eraserhead, Present Mike, Cementos, Midnight, Snipe, Ectoplasm, Powerloader, and Vlad King were all sitting down in the staff meeting room waiting. They didn't know what to do with themselves. They couldn't focus enough to do paperwork either. They all have met the kids and gotten along with them since they had become the pride and joy of UA for being the youngest UA students to get their provisional licenses. However, they were now wondering if they sent the boys out too soon. Did they make the right call? After waiting for a bit longer after the first call that Nezu had done, they received a phone call back from Gang Orc. They all sat up straighter and attempted to listen to the call. Nezu, though, didn't put it on speaker this time. For some reason, he knew not to. "Do you have news, Gang Orc?" Nezu asked. Then after a few moments, Nezu hanged the phone up and he was silent for a few moments. He then threw his teacup. This made everyone pale since he has never gotten angry to a point to do that. It was at that moment they knew the answer. He didn't even have to say it for them to know. Someone was dead or all of them were dead. Either way, it wasn't a good end. Nezu got up and looked at everyone. "Gang Orc only told me he was sorry and then gave a hospital for us to go to. Who is willing to retrieve the parents from the Midoriya house? We will need at least 2 drivers," Nezu said. Aizawa suggested that they all go in their cars to pick them up and then arrive with them. They accepted this since they wanted to support the parents. Based on the message, they could only think that they had just lost all of the students. This was the burden that UA needed to take care of. They needed to inform the parents and take them themselves. 7 As such, that is how the staff of UA found themselves at the Midoriya's residence. Nezu also noticed that All Might's truck was at the house as well. Soon Aizawa knocked on the door and there stood All Might. "Nezu, you being here means they didn't make it, did they?" All Might said. The staff looked confused on who this was except Recovery Girl and Nezu. "I'm sorry, old friend. I'm sorry you just lost all of your protégés," Nezu said as he bowed his head to All Might. Aizawa was shocked. Who is he for all 3 boys to be training under him? Aizawa and the staff wondered. Soon the other parents came out with Gran Torino. Nezu informed them that they needed to go to the hospital and he told them the message that he received from Gang Orc. The parents held themselves together. They knew this was a risk always and they would let themselves break when they saw their bodies. Not before then. Not before then. Everyone got into a car and they drove to the hospital. Soon they parked the cars and made their way into the hospital where they spotted Gang Orc. They walked over to him and he saw them. "I'm sorry. Salazar's and Lloyd's, I'm sorry, Inko Midoriya." At this time it is unknown if Izuku made it to the operating table or not. He was still barely alive when he was put into the ambulance, but I was told not to expect him to make it here. I haven't been informed if he survived or not, Gang Orc said as he bowed his head. Everyone was shocked. Izuku was possibly still alive, but they did indeed lose 2 of the 3 boys. All Might and Inko fell back into chairs and were just dazed. The other parents just cried silently. They knew they lost their children, but Izuku had become family to them as well. They needed to know if they had lost all 3 boys or not. 17 After waiting 40 minutes, a doctor came in. "I'm looking for anyone for Fulcrum," he called out, and they all stood up. The doctor recognized some of the heroes from UA and knew that Fulcrum was a provisional hero. He took them all to a private meeting room to talk to the entire group. "Have you all been informed about Domovoy and Red Demon?" the doctor asked, and they said yes. The doctor then talked about Fulcrum. Fulcrum did make it barely to the hospital. It was touch and go for the entire time. We did stabilize him and fixed him up. However, this doesn't mean he is out of the woods yet. Whether he survives is up to him. If he doesn't wake up, then he will likely die. As such, we can only wait to see if he will wake up or his will to live breaks, the doctor said. He then told them Teehee room number and had a nurse guide them. Everyone was numb. The doctor also stated that once they cleaned up the other boys' bodies, then they would be allowed to see them. This is how they all found themselves in Izuku's room waiting for the night. The other parents left to see their children's bodies once they were cleared. Inko also went with them. All Might told her he would stay with Izuku. Aizawa asked All Might who he was since Inko left. All Might looked at Nezu and Nezu nodded his head. All Might then buffed up. "Hilo," he said as he buffed back down. The staff was shocked. They just learned All Might's other form and the story behind it. He also explained how Izuku came into his teaching and then the boys later came into play. They were so amazing. I'm so proud to have had them as my protégés. Izuku. He is going to be devastated when he wakes up. He saw those two as brothers. All Might stated. Nezu then spoke. Indeed he will be, but we will be here for him and help him recover. If anything, this will make his will of being a hero even stronger to prevent this from happening to other people. Nezu stated with a sad smile on his face. He hated the fact that he had lost two students. Aizawa on the other hand was filled with sorrow. This made him remember his friend's death and he could see Izuku so much in himself now. Don't worry Lloyd, Salazar. I will help him the best I can and keep him moving. Aizawa stated in his mind. He didn't want Izuku to turn as cold as he did after his friend's death. 13 Soon all of the parents came back and so did Gang Orc after talking to the police for a bit. The police and the other heroes found the gym and found all the dead bodies and injured villains. Though they were not going to press charges for excessive force because they had witness statements from all of the civilians that stated that the boys had no choice but to kill since the villains didn't leave them a choice. The police were also happy to know the reason behind the attack and who did it. It went unsaid that a lot of people were happy that the main villain did get killed, though that was a morbid thought. 6 Gang Orc sat down as he saw everyone in the private room now. It was one of those large ones since All Might had told the hospital to transfer him into it and that he would pay for it. He even went into his buff form before talking to the doctor and said it. That is why Izuku got transferred from the smaller room that couldn't fit everyone to the much larger room. Gang Orc cleared his throat and got everyone's attention. I'm assuming you all want to know the details of what happened? He asked and they all said yes. We don't have Izuku's version of the details, but we got a clear view as it stands and the case has been closed in regards to it. The site where everything happened was found, including a large number of villains. The boys fought over 130 villains total to protect a group of 40 civilians that had gotten trapped inside a gym. The villains came after they had freed them and blocked the escape route out of the gym. Gang Orc stated as he stopped to take a drink of water. This was a hard story for him to tell. Based on the details from the civilians, the boys didn't use lethal means until they were left with no choice but to. The boys fought for 2 hours against over 130 villains. It started with a smaller number, but they increased their ranks as the fight went on. This turned it into a war of attraction which the boys knew they wouldn't win. Soon the boys got brutal in their methods and aimed to keep the villains down by snapping bones in the legs or arms or making deep enough injuries to keep them down. However, by this point, the boys were already tired and no help was coming since the radio waves were blocked inside the destroyed zone. They found that one villain had activated his quirk which wasn't connected to the fight. This villain has been arrested and will be charged with their murders even though he didn't know it happened. His actions helped lead to the boys' deaths. Gang Orc stated. Everyone was tense. The boys had fought for so long and no help ever came, yet they never gave up. All Might only looked at his protege and just cried. 3. According to the civilians that they saved, the boys kept smiles on their faces in front of their deaths. They refused to let harm come to the group and stood in the way of the villains. One villain, in particular, was important to all of these events. It was the leader of the Serpent Gang that had caused the destruction. Izuku had killed him when it became only them two left. Gang Orc stated. He asked them if they wanted him to explain the exact moments the boys died or not and left it up to them. They wanted to know everything, so he told them. He told them how they got life-threatening wounds and had gotten pulled back by Izuku but had woken up and knew they were going to bleed to death before they ever got help. As such, they got up and stood by Izuku's side and said words to him that no one knows. They then were told about how the boys charged one more time and took out as many villains as they could and only used lethal blows to take them to the grave with them. They were also told how Izuku refused to leave their bodies at the site for the villains to wake up and find. As such, he carried them even though he was bleeding to death himself and had collapsed when they arrived at the medical tent. 4. During the entire time, from start to finish, the boys never stopped smiling. The civilians also said that Izuku kept a smile on his face even when he carried their bodies and made it to the medical tent, though the civilians could see the real emotions in his eyes. They wanted to offer their apology for the boys having to lay down their lives for them and are wishing to attend the funeral when it happens. Gang Orc said as he finished the story. Of the 130 or so villains present, 90 of them were killed or died from the wounds they sustained before getting medical help. None of the civilians received any injuries from the fight, and 2 provisional heroes lost their lives, with 1 in a critical state. This story without their names was released to the media the following day, and the public made candlelight vigil outside the hospital and at the site of the incident. This incident went on to be known as the Three Misfits tragedy. 43 Izuku woke up 2 days later and busted into tears when he saw the parents of his 2 friends and could only keep chanting that he was sorry. They hugged him and told him that he had nothing to be sorry for as they cried with him. He was their son just like the other 2 boys were. They knew they had all become brothers due to their pasts. They told him that they still saw him as a family member and would always see him as a family member, and that he was welcomed in their home whenever he wanted. Inko had arrived at the hospital with All Might and just silently hugged Izuku. Nezu and Aizawa arrived with Recovery Girl, who has been working in the hospital and others since the night he was admitted. She wanted to help as much as she could since she could no longer go out on the front lines. 7. When Izuku saw his teacher, he looked at him and said, "I can't stop moving. They would be pissed with me, and they made me promise to keep smiling. They made me promise not to die unless it was in a blaze of glory or at a ripe old age. So that is what I will do. I will brighten this world up so everyone that feels outcasted can feel safer in this world," Izuku said with determination. "As such, please push me until I can't move anymore. Please don't let me stop moving forward," Izuku asked with a smile on his face but tears pouring down his face. Inko knew. She knew that he would die one day, and she couldn't stop it even though she wanted to. It would be far crueler of her to stop her son from walking his path. It would be cruel to deny him after he has lost his 2 brothers, since he will live the dream for all 3 of them. As such, Inko could only hug her son and pray that he will live as long as possible, and she knew to enjoy every second she had with him from now on. The other parents and staff of UA could only look in awe at Izuku and his determination. They had worried that he would be broken completely. However, he still held on. Though, they could tell that he indeed did break apart, but the promise that he made to his brothers had kept the parts from fully shattering and would let them have enough time to help glue everything back properly, or the best they could, since no one fully recovered from this. 3rd Pav. 4. Izuku was released from the hospital after being stuck in it for about a week. Everyone kept visiting and seeing how he was doing. The Hero Commission had come and thanked him for stopping the villain that had caused the entire incident and asked him if there was anything they could do for him. Though his hero name and real name weren't released to the public per his request, public support for him was high due to what he and his brother did. The story of them defending 40 civilians to the death had spread like wildfire, and the only identifying details that were made public were that they had belonged to UA's heroic class and had their provisional licenses already. Nothing outside of that was released per Izuku's request, since he didn't want people to use their names for anything like some people are used for after they die. 5. Izuku only had a few requests that the commission was willing to meet without any problems. One was to have both of his brothers granted posthumous hero licenses, and that there be a memorial made for them at UA if the school agreed with it. The boys had a small little forest area that they liked to go eat lunch in that was off the path when walking towards the training fields. Principal Nezu, who was present, agreed with the request right away. That was the only thing Izuku wanted to be done, and the commission was surprised that he didn't ask for anything complex like some people has in the past. Izuku knew not to really ask for anything big. If he wanted something, he would ask his master All Might for his help in getting it done if it didn't require the commission's involvement. Gran Torino and All Might always warned Izuku to be mindful of what deals he makes with them, so he took that to heart and made it simple and easy that they couldn't hang over his head later and ask for a favor from him. After Izuku was released, he learned from the Lloyds and Salazars that the funeral would be held the following week. Izuku didn't know if he could attend and watch them be buried. He was just glad it was currently the summer break and he would have a bit of time to adjust to not being able to lean over to his side and ask his brothers a question, since they were around so often. Izuku would always tear up when he thought about them, but he would keep the smile on his face. 8. The funeral came and it was kept as a private one with the UA staff, Midoriya's, All Might, Gran Torino, and families of the two boys. All Might had shown the two boys' families his form several months before when they had gotten their provisional licenses. Since they were so close to the Midoriyas, he didn't want to cause an issue when he may or may not forget to transform one day. Everyone was sad at the funeral. Nezu had told Izuku that the memorial at the school was completed and when Izuku returned he could visit it whenever he needed to. Nezu knew that he requested the memorial for more of himself so he could just go somewhere and rest with a feeling of them being nearby, since the gravesite was so far out of his path that it would be a challenge to get to it often. As such, Nezu had already warned the staff to allow Izuku to visit whenever he wanted as long as it didn't cause any major issue and he kept his grades up. The staff accepted this easily. Aizawa recognized the memorial being at the eating location of the boys as being Izuku's coping measure. Aizawa himself did something similar when he lost his friend on the field. 15. Izuku had refused to see Hound Dog currently. I don't need to start questioning everything I'm feeling right now. I think when it gets closer to school to start again, then I will likely see him to help myself manage, but right now I just need to let the emotions run their course. Izuku had stated to everyone when they requested him to see Hound Dog, and even Hound Dog himself had agreed with Izuku's assumption. He is right. The emotions need to rush the course the first time so he can better understand them and talk about them with me when we start back up, he stated. Everyone let the topic go for now, but Aizawa had informed the parents that he would keep a close eye on him when school starts to make sure nothing drastic changes. Izuku had started to do light exercise to get his body moving around again as it recovers, since he was in pretty bad shape when he got to the hospital. The doctors warned him against doing heavy training for a few weeks until Recovery Girl clears him, but they did provide him basic workouts that he could do without any problems. Recovery Girl had Izuku return to UA for a checkup every 2 days to make sure he didn't push it. After the weeks of physical recovery were over, Izuku went to All Might and asked him to up the training. I can only use 45%. I can't help but think of the what ifs. What if I had 50%? What if I had 60%? Would I have been able to keep them alive? I know I will never answer those questions, but I don't want another what if in my future where I allow someone to die and I could have likely saved them if I had more control. So please push me until the breaking point, Izuku said as he bowed his head to his master. Gran Torino was standing off on the side and had a flashback. He remembered this situation. He remembered how Toshiyanri was when Nana died. Got his heart hurt to see this once again. All Might himself had the same flashback of when his master died and wondered all the what-ifs as well. He knew he was in the same spot his protege is in now. 9. To the breaking point. Fine, to the breaking point we will go. All Might said as he buffed up and just slammed Izuku down onto the mats. Get moving then, he yelled as he charged at Izuku. Gran Torino just got up and powered up his quirk and started to relentlessly assault Izuku as well. This went on for hours until Izuku fell down to the ground and couldn't stand on his own anymore. He relaxed his muscles as he cooled down on the mat and just his mind on the plans he was making. He would have his mentors and UA push him until the breaking point. Izuku, Gang Work wants to know if you still want to do the work studies with him or not. All Might asked as he had dropped his buff form and sat down. Izuku knew he wanted to keep doing work studies. If he didn't, then he wouldn't be pushing forward. The problem was, can he go back to the same agency where he had so many good times with his friends and not break down? I don't know if I can walk into that agency and not break down. Izuku stated. They accepted this answer and would tell Gang Orc that it was still being thought on and tell him the reason since it was a valid one. All Might had told Izuku that he could start working at his agency and not make any public appearance with All Might, so that they wouldn't be connected to each other until they wanted to release the news. All Might had even suggested that they could ask Sir Night-Eye, but Izuku rejected that. He separated from you all those years ago and you guys are on bad terms. We don't need to go ask him. If we needed another agency, just one request from you could get me in almost any agency, so we don't need to make you go ask your former sidekick that you're on bad terms with. Anyway, Gang Orc would likely give a recommendation to another agency if I asked him as well. Izuku stated. He didn't want All Might to grovel back to the old sidekick that left him over a vision. All Might had told Izuku about the vision of his death that his sidekick gave him, and Izuku refused to believe fate was set in stone. Otherwise, did that mean anything they did was pointless if it was destined to happen regardless? Why bother saving people if it was fate for them to go through the pain? As such, Izuku didn't really want to deal with Sir Night-Eye at all. Izuku decided that he would likely go with All Might's agency but wouldn't decide until closer to school starting up again. He didn't know if he could walk into that agency and see everyone when his mind correlated that agency and their deaths too much since it happened on patrol. Izuku got off the ground since he rested enough and started to do some weightlifting. He needed to get past the 45% mark and do better. His goal was to be at 80% or 90% by the end of his second year. Izuku refused to have another what-if situation. Aizawa was given the location of the gym and told that Izuku is starting his training again. Aizawa wanted to be present as much as he could in Izuku's training, so he knew how much he could be pushed at the school since Izuku would be pushing himself non-stop outside of school. Aizawa just got into his sleeping bag and laid down on the floor in the warehouse. As Aizawa watched, he noticed that the weight training Izuku was doing would lead to more bulky muscles like All Might instead of more dense and compact muscles, which he really needed due to the quirk he had. Nezu and All Might made the decision to bring Aizawa into the Keepers of the Secret with Izuku's approval since Aizawa would be with him the most outside of the warehouse. Aizawa got up and stopped the training. "Stop. This training is wrong for you," he stated, and they all looked at him confused. Aizawa rolled his eyes and started to talk again. "This training is correct but not what you need really at the current time. This training will lead to more bulky muscles like All Might's when you don't have a body like his. You are more slim and short, which means you need to pack on more compact and dense muscles. This type of training takes a bit longer but produces a bit better results for what you are wanting to get, since it will create more muscle fibers in your body, which is what your quirk uses for the strength aspect. You need to focus on compound exercises," Aizawa stated. He then explained about increasing a muscle's time under tension and the volume of workouts while having correct rest periods between them. Aizawa then explained how he works out since he needs to build a slimmer and denser body instead of a bulkier body. All Might thought it over and approved of the idea. He is right. The training I had you do can still be used, but every once in a while you do this compound training more to increase the density. I had forgotten about this method since I used the previous one to build myself up for One for All, but I forgot I had a lot more time to build up, and One for All was much weaker to control than your version," All Might stated. As such, Izuku's training plan was adjusted to meet the new method. 3. This training went on for the 3 months of summer break, and Izuku had pushed himself. If he didn't need to be doing something else, he was in the warehouse working out. At one point Inko and the parents of Lloyd and Salazar came over and forced him to stop. "Sweetie, you are going to kill yourself if you keep doing this non-stop. You need to take a step out of this warehouse and do something else for a few hours each day," Inko said. The other parents just agreed with her and guilt-tripped him into getting out of the warehouse. Izuku agreed to leave and spend a few hours doing something that was him exercising inside the warehouse. As such, that is how Izuku found himself walking to the little forest area that was on one of the paths towards the training grounds. It was slightly past the PE grounds but wasn't that far from the school at all. If someone walked, it would only take them 2 minutes to arrive on foot from the PE grounds. The little forest area had a decent-sized pond at it with a larger rock that the boys would always sit on. As Izuku walked to the area that they would always go to, he noticed that Nezu had Smintos create a pathway with cement from the main path towards the area they would always go to. When Izuku arrived, he noticed mostly everything was the same. However, there were now a few cement tables and chairs built on the side of the pond area near the big rock. 5. The table itself was stationary into the ground, but the sitting cement chairs had small holes on the side that someone could lift them and move them to fit themselves at the table. Izuku attempted to lift one and found it was more or less hollow inside but was still strong enough to sit on due to being made out of cement. Then Nezu appeared. "Hello, Izuku. All Might had texted me that the parents forced you out of the warehouse and I noticed you'd passed the gate. Nezu stated as he walked over to the tables and sat down. Izuku moved over to the table and then saw something else between the tables. It was a large fireplace that had both Lloyd's and Salazar's faces on it, and under either Lloyd and Salazar was their birth dates and date of death. It also had an inscription under it that read, "In memory of the fallen heroes that went out in a blaze of glory." Izuku noticed a blank spot between them and Nezu spoke up. "It's for you. It's common fact that you three saw each other as brothers and didn't care if you weren't tied by blood. The day you die you will be buried right by both of them in the gravesite, since All Might and the families have already bought the spot for you. You will also be placed on the memorial fireplace. I found it fitting to reference the blaze of glory with a fireplace that you can light up when you are out here in the colder months. It's close enough to the water that if an accident happens you can put it out and you get wood from the forest," Nezu stated. Izuku just smiled and had some tears down his face. He thanked Nezu and then sat down and looked over the pond. They sat there for a bit before Nezu talked again. 21. How are you holding up, Izuku? He asked. Izuku took a second before responding. I'm getting there. I've been putting all my spare time into training. I don't want another what if going on where I could have stopped it. I know I will want to talk to Hound Dog when classes start again, since I know I'm suffering survivor's guilt. Otherwise, I just want to get classes going and back to work. Currently, as it stands, I only have the third-year material left and the only thing I will lack will be the full hero license. I've decided to work out of All Might's tower as well. Nothing against Gang Orc, but my mind is associated with his office building with the incident. I don't blame him or anyone at that office, but when I think of walking into that office so many memories come up of them that it hurts to even consider walking into that office," Izuku stated. Nezu nodded his head and was glad Izuku was willing to talk to Hound Dog. He told Izuku he would inform Gang Orc and All Might of his plans and assured Izuku that Gang Orc wouldn't be offended by his decision and that it was understandable. "Izuku, I'm also having the classroom changed to a different room. It will also have most of the things you had before but a different layout to help with you being calm and okay in the classroom," Nezu stated. Izuku just thanked him since he was kind of afraid of having a breakdown in that classroom as well. Izuku then asked Nezu an important question he had. "Sir, I have a request if you would be willing to hear it and consider it," Izuku asked, and Nezu asked him to explain. "When I hit my third year I will have all my education done except hero training and getting my license. As such, I would like Aizawa not to be my homeroom teacher anymore and see if he would teach 1A again. My little brother figure will be aiming for UA when I hit the third year. As such, I would like Nezu to watch over them and I would like you to be made my official homeroom teacher and allow me to help Aizawa with that class in 1B as well. I just want to help them grow and not repeat my group's fate. I have no concerns about him passing into UA at all, I just would like Aizawa to be his teacher because he has a slight attitude that can be worked out via Aizawa," Izuku asked Nezu. Nezu was silent for a few moments and thought it over. "I will talk to the staff. We actually were facing a problem you might have solved. One of the homeroom teachers is retiring after next year and we would be short one person to cover all of them. If we did make me yours and Aizawa 1A, then it would all work out. For the most part, you would do what you wish as long as it didn't cause a problem and you could go to your classroom whenever you need to, though I'm expecting you will be here for the most part," Nezu stated, and Izuku agreed that he would likely spend most of his days doing his work at this spot. As such, a partial plan was made for Izuku's third year since he would finish his required education in his second year and would only have heroic training and his license to obtain. Izuku had also asked about obtaining a teaching license to better help the staff in his third year, and Nezu just grinned and said he would include it in his second year classes so he would have it in time. Third POV. The summer break had come to an end and Izuku got to work on his second year of UA. This year would be important since he needed to ensure he finished all of his third year material during his second year so he can be able to watch over Kachan and his classmates that are in 1A and 1B. Nezu had started him on the teaching license qualifications that he would need to pass before the second year is over. Overall, it was straightforward and wouldn't require him the entire second year. He predicted that it would only take him half a semester. Izuku also learned that All Might has decided to start teaching at UA since his time limit is starting to decrease. All Might was now sitting at 6 hours total, and they predict that by the end of the third year he would be near 3 hours or less, as long as All Might didn't face any grand battles and had to push himself. 1. Izuku also learned that he wasn't going to get a teaching license, which didn't go over well when Izuku learned that. That is how they found themselves in the warehouse with Izuku berating his master. "Are you really serious? You were planning to start teaching at UA without a basic teaching license?" "For the love of God, master, I'm getting a teaching license myself for plans Nezu and I have," Izuku shouted. That part caught everyone's attention. "What plans?" asked Aizawa, who had been enjoying the show of All Might get yelled at, which was a rare never seen before sight. Izuku froze at that. "Well, it will be brought up in a staff meeting, but Nezu had told me how you all are short one staff person for homerooms next year. So he will bring the idea I suggested up. You won't be my homeroom teacher anymore and would teach 1A again, and Nezu would take me in a homeroom, but in reality, I would be doing whatever I want since my education would be done. I also asked to help with classes for 1A and 1B since I don't want them to suffer my fate of losing their friends so early," Izuku said with the last part at a low tone, but they all heard it. They all put their heads down a bit. Aizawa himself hated the fact that Izuku felt like that. Aizawa feels like he failed Izuku and his brothers so much and wish he could have done something. Aizawa didn't really want to let Izuku go until he had to, which seemed sooner than he realized. "So you will still really be under my watch, but just in a different manner. All except it. I don't really want you leaving my sight before you graduate, so this would fix the staff issue but also keep you in my sight most of the time," Aizawa stated. Izuku already knew that Aizawa had a large fear now of losing Izuku. Izuku knew about his teacher's feelings of self-hatred in regards to losing Izuku's brothers and failing Izuku when Izuku never blamed him in the first place. So he just accepted the fact that Aizawa would want him nearby in his line of sight whenever possible to ensure that he was still breathing, since the surgery was touch and go for a while, as Izuku later learned. Even All Might had the hidden motive of wanting to be near Izuku more at UA, so the teaching of the UA heroic classes would allow him to decrease his time in hero form out in public but also stay closer to Izuku. 4. Now the topic was shifted back to the teaching topic since Izuku remembered about it. Almost made me forget. Now, you will get a teaching license. If I can get one, so can you," Izuku stated as he glared at his master. Gran Torino just laughed at them and agreed with Izuku. Indeed, it would be weird if that fact got out to the public. "How do you think they would react to you not having one?" Gran stated. All Might just rubbed the back of his head and gave in and called Nezu to start setting up a teaching certification class for him as well. Nezu had anticipated the call and had one already. All Might just had to sign in and start learning. Izuku got to work on his physical warm-ups and workouts. Over the summer break, he had pushed his control from 45% to 50%. Izuku had also started to plan out new attacks that he could use. One move that he figured out one day was interesting, to say the least. He combined float and the use of one for all and created a miniature tornado. Izuku would use float to stay in the air and then use one for all to rotate at a high speed, which created a tornado that was strong enough to lift most people off the ground and throw them hard enough to knock them out. Izuku had to work on his ability to withstand his one rotation and not be affected by it in the end, or else it was useless in combat. This move also screwed anyone with flying abilities that weren't strong enough to withstand the wind speed. All Might had told Izuku that his cross-arm attack was similar to his Carolina Smash, but Izuku used it more as a force of wind attack to push people back and stun them when he used it to straight-out knock people out. They did go to UA during the school day and practice his ability to change the weather, since it was a good method of putting fires out. The ability to make it rain is caused by the large rush of very hot or warm air into the sky, which meets the cold air in the sky. Once the cold air and the warm air meets, it causes the water vapor that went up with the air to come back down as rain, which results in the downpour of rain. It took Izuku quite a few tries to get it, but after some weeks he did learn how to make some small downpours of rain. 1. His teaching license education was going well and he would soon have it finished. Aizawa had also started to teach Izuku underground hero tactics since Izuku had a dark theme built into his suit as a feature. Izuku wanted to learn more about the underground heroes' work in the event that he ever had to work during the night or needed to work with underground heroes. Izuku's suit, if anyone forgot about it. Just ignore the stuff about the black whip. 1. Izuku had finally gotten full control of float and could use it to fly without the aid of One for All. Unless he desired to have a very large speed boost, he no longer used them at the same time while just flying. He still used the two for his fighting style, which has only gotten better and quicker. Izuku has gotten really good at taking people out quickly and efficiently within a handful of moves since Aizawa taught Izuku a large amount of quirkless fighting styles that he incorporated into his float fighting style. Izuku more or less looked like someone break dancing according to Gran Torino, which surprised everyone that he knew what that was. Izuku just laughed when he had said that and agreed, since Izuku has used some head spins and other things from breakdancing. Because honestly, why wouldn't he when Float and One for All made it easy to do moves like that and use them in combat to deliver powerful kicks or punches? He was able to remove one of the dummies' heads when he did a black flip and landed on his hands and head, and did a head spin that ripped the dummy's head off when his kick during the spin landed. 11. Everyone was a bit fearful of that spin kick since it ripped the head clean off. Aizawa told Izuku not to use that on a real person, which made Izuku laugh a bit in dark humor. Now, while all of this training and learning was going on, Izuku had also been doing his work study out of All Might's agency without the public or others knowing. Only key staff at the Might Tower was told of this information, since they would need to work with Izuku on any paperwork issues or other things that Izuku asked for. All Might had told the staff that was informed to treat the words of Izuku as All Might's own words. All Might had also informed these staff members that Izuku was his protege and would be taking over Might Tower on the day All Might retired, which he announced to them would be in the next 3 or so years. The staff was surprised but also wasn't fully shocked, since these key staff members did know about his true form but none of the other staff knew. As such, Izuku took up patrols in different crime-ridden areas since he was hesitant to go back to his old patrol route that Gang Orc had his brothers and him on. He did meet the civilians from that day and they had asked him if he would return to patrolling there, and Izuku had to tell them no. "I'm sorry, I can't bring myself to go back there anytime soon. It hurts too much. I'm also working out of a different agency instead of Gang Orcs, since going into his office makes me associate everything with that day. I am patrolling some other crime-infested areas though, since I want to make more impact in those areas like me and my brothers had always aimed to do," Izuku stated. The civilians accepted that answer easily since they knew it would likely hurt. They could tell Izuku had gotten better but could see in his eye and past the smile that he was still hurting from that day. To others that weren't there, he would appear as if he was fine, but they could tell the difference. The old man asked Izuku if he minded if they created the first official fan club for him, and Izuku just tried to hold back a laugh but failed. "Ahaha, sure. God, my brothers are probably laughing right now about us having a fan club. God, sure. I will even follow it with my official social media account and recognize it as the only official fan club since it will be you guys running it," Izuku stated. He was glad he met the civilians from that day again. It helped his heart feel lighter at seeing the impact that his brothers and he had. It was nice to see the little kids from that day play around him. Soon the conversation came to an end and Izuku went back to training for the day. 5. Izuku's sessions with Hound Dog have also been helping Izuku. Last month, I met the group we saved that day. It helped to see their faces and see the little children from that day play around me. It helped to know that they didn't die for nothing and that we had an impact," Izuku said as he broke down into tears and let his smile fall. It was one of the rare times he would let the smile fall when he was with other people. Hound Dog had been helping Izuku process the emotions and the survivor's guilt. They had made a lot of progress over the several months that Izuku has been seeing him, and the staff was happy that Izuku had agreed to talk about it with someone. They had noticed the difference before he started to talk about it and after. 1. As Izuku training was going on throughout the first semester, Izuku was also gaining an increasing fan base due to all the work he did in crime-infested areas. These people hardly ever saw pro heroes since a lot of the ones that weren't true heroes would just stay in more public areas and richer areas instead of going into the crime-ridden areas where the TV cameras weren't at. Izuku didn't care about being put on the TV, he honestly hated that idea and had active plans to manipulate the media to suit his needs in regards to public perceptions about certain things. Though back to the fan base. It was slowly increasing with the people he was having an impact on in these crime-infested areas, and they would spread his name as a true hero, unlike others which just helped his name grow more. All Might had even congratulated Izuku since he had over 100k people in his fan base now. Izuku looked into it and found a lot of the people belonged to the city that got destroyed by the villain known as Shockwave. Izuku was happy that he was inspiring people because they would post about doing community projects and other things and encouraged others to get active in their communities to make them better, which Izuku would support. He would even show up at some of them and help out if it was large cleanup projects or repainting buildings. The cleanup projects he would use as some physical training. For example, they had a park that was filled with rubble and other trash from the destruction that happened, and Izuku arrived and helped them out by using his quirk to carry out the bigger pieces so they didn't have to get a large machine to move the parts. The first semester had come to an end quickly and Izuku found himself in the second semester. Izuku had checked in with Kachan a lot during the year and saw how he was coming along in his personal training since he was planning for UA. Izuku had given him some tips but didn't do much since he knew Kachan wanted to get in on his own merit and not Izuku's help. Izuku just shrugged his shoulders at that but went with it. God, I hope Aizawa kills your attitude when he gets a hold of you. I'm just glad you didn't turn into a bully since I stopped those damn teachers years ago. Izuku thought. This made him think of the old case he was involved with that had the brainwashing quirked kid involved in it. He decided to check in with Nezu about that since a lot of things happened. Nezu had told Izuku that the school was ripped apart and the teachers involved were dealt with harshly. The bullies were blacklisted from hero schools as well and they tried to sue but the video evidence screwed them over. The brainwashing kid was helped and his parents informed. They checked his home and found that he did have good parents and it was just the school. The parents took a better step in helping their son get ready to train for UA as well since they got him a gym membership and some martial arts lessons. Nezu also pointed out Izuku's hint. You know that was cutting it close on telling him right? Nezu asked and Izuku just grinned. Indeed, cutting it close but not breaking any rules. Isn't that what you teach me? Bending the rules but not breaking them to get what you want or need. Izuku said with a grin on his face. Nezu just ranked his tea and smirked. God, I think All Might regrets introducing you to me. Nezu stated Nad Izuku could agree with that since Izuku had developed a sadistic side of himself that he showed when punishing others. 24. Izuku had received his teaching certification and had started to learn some lesson plans and other things that he would likely need when it came to the third year. Izuku had already finished the first semester of his third year knowledge and only had the last semester to finish this year and he would be in a perfect spot for his third year. The physical training that Aizawa had Izuku start doing was showing great results. As it was getting closer and closer to the end of the second semester of his second year he was getting more and more control of One for All. He was pushing his current control at 75% right now and would likely hit 80% by the end of the semester and could likely hit 85% by the end of the summer. The lessons with Hound Dog had decreased from once a week to once every other week as he deemed Izuku in a much better state but still wanted to see him as time passes. Izuku didn't have a problem with that and had plans to keep talking to someone once he graduates since he recognized the need for it. The guilt of surviving was more or less gone but it would have lingering effects. Izuku's main coping method was and still is going to the forest pond area and doing his work or just relaxing at it. Though one day did not go well, some idiot first years decided to go to the spot during the second semester since they had found it by accident and they decided to act like idiots. One had decided to piss on the fire pit to put the fire out since Izuku had gone to get some more firewood to relight the fire since he had run out. Izuku was not happy when he walked back and saw it. He powered up One for All that day and just knocked the kid and the others out and dragged them to Nezu's office. 14. The staff saw him dragging them and saw the look on his face and it wasn't pretty. They decided to follow him since it was lunchtime and find out what happened that made their sunshine boy so pissed. They weren't happy either. The moment Izuku got to Nezu's office and the door opened, he threw them on the ground, which made them wake up. They shouted at Izuku for attacking them. The staff looked at Izuku, who just glared. "Oh, yay, I didn't. I will attack you again if you ever decide to piss on a damn memorial site. Do you fucking understand me?" Izuku yelled. The staff's eyes widened in shock at what they heard. Aizawa went ballistic that some stupid first years decided to piss on his deceased student's memorial site. He wrapped them in his capture gear and glared at them. "Start talking or all of you are expelled. I want to know which one did it," he stated, and they outed the guy quickly. Nezu just straight out expelled the student that did it and placed the rest on probation. They tried to object since they didn't do anything. Nezu wasn't having it. "You were all attending UA, which is a prestigious school. Yet one of you decided to piss on a memorial site for some of our deceased hero students who died in the line of duty during their time here, and none of you others thought it was smart to stop him. That isn't behavior accepted here. Be happy I'm not expelling you all. If you had been in the hero course, you all would be expelled, no question asked. Instead, you all will be on probation except the other young man who was expelled. You will all join me as we call your parents and inform them of the reason why," Nezu said with a cold tone. He wasn't wearing his smile anymore since this actually pissed him off. 6. Izuku had just left and went and grabbed cleaning supplies and took it out to the spot and cleaned the entire memorial to ensure it was clean. Aizawa just stood in the distance and watched to make sure Izuku didn't go on a rampage in a rage since Izuku still appeared pissed. He did notice Izuku start to shed some tears while cleaning it, and he decided to stay back a bit further to give him privacy. The parents of the kid that was getting expelled did attempt to get Izuku in trouble for quirk use and assault, but Izuku pulled out his provisional card and stated, "Your son was actually committing a crime. Want to take this public? Then fine. What do you think will happen once they hear that your son pissed on a memorial site for hero students that died in the line of duty and I beat his ass for it, which was legal by the way since what he did was a crime of defacement of property. So want to try this bullshit, or are you just going to shut up and accept the fact that your kid isn't welcomed here anymore?" he stated with a cold tone while smiling, which made it even scarier. The parents just kept silent and signed the papers and left. Nezu just laughed after they left since he found Izuku's face and tone perfect. 20. Soon the second semester was coming to a close and Izuku training was also going quite well. He had taken his final exam and had passed. He was now done with all of his third-year course material and had his teaching certification. He did find out that All Might finished getting his as well. Izuku's physical training was paying off as well since he had hit 80% control of One for All and was currently relaxing as the final week of the second semester came to a close. Izuku Midoriya aka Fulcrum was now going into his third year of UA, and his fan club has also grown much more than at the start of the year. Izuku had been finishing cases and hammering down on crime in the crime-infested areas at a fast pace, which has gained a lot of attention. The hero in training name of Fulcrum was becoming more well-known and talked about more on social media. Izuku was currently sitting at the memorial site and looked at his friends' faces. Soon I will be helping the first years not repeat our year. Hopefully, Kachan and his classmates have a better time than we did during our first year with less drama. I miss you guys and hope you are both doing good up in the afterlife," Izuku stated. Izuku realized that he spent most of his time either out at the pond or just going to the staff room to ask questions when he wasn't doing something else. It was a bit strange not staying in a standard classroom after all of this time, but he knew he would be spending more time in one since he will help 1A and 1B during their first year. Third POV. The second year of UA came to an end for Izuku. Now it was time for summer break and preparing for his third year. Izuku wanted to get ready for this upcoming year. He was in the warehouse working out and thinking. He kind of hoped that one kid from the past bullying case would try out for UA and would have figured out the hint he gave him. Izuku decided that he would keep an eye out for that kid and watch him during the exam, since Izuku was invited to watch in the control room and help judge for rescue points. He would also spend time helping All Might with any last-minute plans for his heroic lessons. The staff had agreed to the idea of Nezu being Izuku's official homeroom teacher and Aizawa taking Class 1A again since it was suggested by Izuku. Izuku honestly realized the sheer amount of power he has in the school. The staff treats him more or less like an actual staff person, and Nezu even gave him a higher security clearance badge that matched the staff's clearance. 4. Izuku was even given a desk in the staff room, which shocked him but felt nice since he doesn't spend a large amount of time in his official classroom. As such, Izuku does his paperwork from the work-study either at the pond or at the staff room now. He also had a few homework papers to do whenever Nezu decides to assign him challenging work for specialized classes that they kept doing since it was actually useful. It was also decided to have All Might and Izuku fight it out to see how his strength compares to All Might currently. Izuku was currently sitting at 85% of One for All since it was closing in on the end of the summer break, and he has been using the extra time to physically train non-stop to get that extra control. If everything worked out correctly, then he would reach 90% or 95% at the end of the first semester and hit 100% by the time he graduates. Though they did remember that Izuku's fighting style provides him a 5% boost more or less when he uses his floating fighting style due to its speed and power he can generate with some attacks, so Izuku can theoretically put off 90% of power when he is only using 85%. This is also combined with the fact that Izuku's power is about 10% or so stronger than All Might's currently, so his 90% is 100% compared to All Might's. This doesn't mean that it won't grow stronger, since Izuku's true 100% will grow as he pushes his body and accumulates strength as he grows older, like All Might did when he received One for All and grew its strength. Once he reaches 100%, his 100% will grow stronger as time passes, and he grows stronger physically and adds more power to the quirk that will be passed down later on. 3. As such, Izuku and All Might were in the ground beta since it was the easier place to repair after the fight was done. Izuku walked into the city and just felt like he just let all other things go and just focused right on this fight and nothing else. This was going to be a no-holding-back match so Nezu could get a grasp on Izuku's current strength compared to All Might. The match started with Nezu announcing it with a go at random. Izuku then blasts into the air with float and looked for his master. A few seconds later he felt a shockwave of air blast him, but he held his spot in the air more or less and only moved a few feet back. He turned around where it came from and saw his master jump towards him. Izuku maneuvered out of his path, and the moment All Might passed him in his failed jump to get him, Izuku came right behind All Might's descent and landed a meteor kick to his crossed hands. This caused the ground beneath All Might to break apart and All Might's feet were pushed into the ground a bit. All Might forced Izuku back when he pulled the cross arms apart, generating a large gust of wind. Izuku landed half a block away and just looked at his master. After a few seconds, they both charged at each other and just went straight for a blow towards each other. The fists connected and neither was giving any leeway to the other. Izuku did slide back a bit every few seconds, but he was still holding himself up and holding strong. "How much are you using, my boy?" All Might asked. "Using 85%, Izuku stated. All Might was shocked since he was going at 100%. They separated from each other and took some distance. Izuku then used Float and One for All and boosted off at a fast speed to get up close to All Might before he could react and landed a kick to his uninjured side. Then Izuku whipped around and put his two legs around All Might's throat, and he used his two hands to hold All Might's arms up. During this, he had One for All power to his max and he was using Float to make himself float upwards, applying even more pressure to All Might's throat since he was trying to float both of them upwards. All Might struggled a lot and tried to get Izuku off of him. However, the problem was Izuku was using Float, which made them float a bit in the air, which removed All Might's feet from the ground. Without his feet on the ground, All Might was having a tough time getting free and he was starting to feel the effect of his airway being cut off. However, he wasn't the number one and symbol of peace for nothing. All Might used the floating to his ability and lifted both legs forward and then swung them back and forth to flip them upside down, which allowed him to breathe again and overpower Izuku to break free from the hold. All Might grabbed Izuku's arm and just tossed him down onto the ground, shattering it. Izuku got up quickly but was met with a punch that he blocked. It made him slide back quite a few feet, but he stopped himself with Float counteracting the force. Izuku looked at this master and then kicked the ground to force some of it where he hit it, sending rubble flying at All Might. At that moment he followed behind it, and as All Might took a large swing to clear the rubble, Izuku got up close and did a punch right to All Might's chin, knocking him back. This fight went on for about 10 more minutes with All Might winning. He won since he was able to dodge one attack of Izuku's and then turn the force of the punch to swing Izuku over his body and onto the ground, where All Might pinned him down, ending the fight. Good job, my boy. If this was a fight of attrition, then I would lose, but my experience gives me a slight advantage that allowed me to look for the perfect time to pin you down. Let's focus on those moments in your training moving forward so a mistake like this doesn't happen again. All Might stated as he lifted off of Izuku. They soon made it back to the control room and was met with a round of applause. Good job, Izuku, you were the first person to go that long with All Might. Though they all knew the first would be all for one. It's safe to say that your overall strength is relatively equal to All Might's currently and will only grow more as time passes into your prime. Nezu stated. All Might just patted Izuku's head and Izuku blushed in embarrassment under the praise. Now, as you all remember, the entrance exam will be in a few weeks. We've received quite a number of applications this year. Eraserhead and Vlad King will be the homeroom teachers for the first years, while I will be taking over officially for 3A. All Might is joining the staff as the heroic staff teacher, and Izuku will be a teaching assistant for 1A and 1B. Izuku's priority is his own training and work, but he can spend his time with those classes as he pleases since we let him already do what he wishes. Nezu stated. Everyone nodded their heads at the plans for the coming school year. So far the media hasn't gotten wind of All Might's plans to teach at the school, so they were still in the clear. Also, I like to remind everyone that All Might and Izuku will be more active in showing up together to solidify their connection moving forward during this year. This is to help the transition of power in the Hero Society from All Might to Fulcrum once All Might's retirement is announced in the foreseeable future. As such, Izuku, for the most part, you will be treated as a staff person with the same authority as them, since we are already putting the weight of the world onto you. Nezu stated with a grim smile. The staff knew the expectations that Ua and All Might have placed on Izuku were large and massive, and they couldn't help feel a bit horrible about it. They were placing the fate of their society on his hands since the public wasn't used to the idea of All Might being gone. They thought of him as unbeatable and that he would be here forever when he won't be. 2. Izuku nodded his head and thanked Nezu for the leeway that he would have in acting around campus. There was also talk between Principal Nezu and the Hero Commission about getting Izuku his license issued already without the exam at the end of the year. All Might had also endorsed it, and so did Gang Orc, which caused the Hero Commission to really consider it. The commission had noticed the fast and growing fan base that Izuku has and that it was one of someone in the top 30 already. Once Izuku connection to All Might was made public, it will skyrocket due to the fan base of All Might shifting to support Fulcrum as well. Izuku knew of Nezu's plans but didn't comment much on it. The only thing he said when he learned of it was that he would still attend Ua during his third year even if he was granted it. 1. Soon the last few weeks before the exam came to a close. It was now the day of the exam and Izuku was hiding around the campus. He had visited the pond much earlier in the day so he wouldn't miss watching the exam. He arrived in the control room and pulled up a seat close to Nezu and watched the cameras that showed the entrance of the school. He spotted Kachan coming into the school and just laughed at the way he walked. "Oh, why do you always walk like that is beyond me," Izuku thought. Izuku kept watching a bit more and noticed the purple-head kid. Nezu saw the screen as well and remembered the kid. "How likely do you think he remembered your hint since it was some time ago?" Nezu asked. Izuku wondered as well. "Well, only one way to find out," Izuku said as he got up and walked away. 1. Izuku soon found himself walking through the hallways towards the auditorium since he waited for the written portion to finish before trying to talk to the kid. He didn't want to distract him from his first test. Izuku came in and sat down next to the boy with purple hair who he remembered as being called Shinso, Hitoshi. "Hello, Shinso," Izuku stated, and the kid looked shocked when he recognized Izuku. "You're Fulcrum," Shinso said in a low tone. "Indeed I am. Now I wonder. Do you remember the advice I gave you when we met that day?" Izuku asked. Shinso said he did start physically training more and got fitter with martial arts. Well, that is good but not the main advice I wanted you to learn that day. What else did I tell you? Izuku asked. Izuku then stood up as Shinso said something about being a hero. Izuku didn't want to stay around since the room was starting to fill up. If Shinso got the answer then it was up to him. This was all the advice Izuku would give him. Izuku soon returned to the control room and Aizawa just looked at Izuku who shrugged his shoulders. What? Izuku asked. The staff said they listened to the conversation he had with the kid. And, I didn't break any rules now did I? Izuku said with a grin. Aizawa just grinned and hid it in the scarf. The other staff just shook their heads at Izuku's antics. They cursed Nezu in their minds for teaching Izuku's to be like this. Nezu just sat there with a grin on his face as he drank tea. Soon Present Mike went out on stage and started to talk about the exam. He was going through the different points of the robots when one student interrupted about a mistake on the pamphlet and how it says there are 4 robots when he said there was only 3. Well, he needs to loosen up or he's going to have a lot of problems in this field. I can name many times where I didn't follow the rules as I should have and I will never regret them. Izuku stated. The staff didn't make a comment since they all had points in their life that they didn't follow the rules because it wasn't worth the cost. 2. Present Mike answered the question and the blue-hair kid looked embarrassed and sat down. Though he did call out Shinso for looking at the pamphlet and not listening to Present Mike. Izuku just shook his head and groaned. Soon, they all were sent to their individual buses and escorted towards where they need to go. I wonder how many will go right away and be confused with the starting trick. Izuku asked since he remembers what Present Mike did to his year. Turns out only a very small handful across the entire exam testers did. The staff watched as the exam takers were tearing through the robots. This year does have some decent exam takers. Looks like we might actually get 2 full classes this year instead of a repeat of Izuku's year. Midnight stated. Izuku just cried out at that statement. Hey, you all had very amazing students that year. Me and my brothers. Izuku pouted. They just chucked. Not saying you weren't sweetie, just saying everyone else was horrible. We had to shrink down to 1 class which became only you 3 boys. You 3 were the best of the best. Midnight stated while pinching Izuku's cheeks. Izuku just swiped her hand away and looked back at the screen. He could see Kachan going wild on destroying the robots. I see what you meant by attitude Izuku. Bakugo will need to adjust that. At least you kept him from being corrupted too badly by his past teachers and his record is clean except for a few things where he defended others. Aizawa stated as he read Bakugo's file. He refused to make the same mistake he did with Izuku and assume based on incorrect assumptions when he didn't know Izuku was quirkless before and could have found out via his file. 10. The exam kept going and Izuku looked at Shinso's score. He had scored a handful of villain points but it wasn't enough to get him into the hero course. Though there were some notes made by the system of possible review points for hero rescue points. The robots that followed people in the air and record them had a feature to flag possible spots for rescue points. They still reviewed everyone but this system made it easier to find the rescue point spots to judge them. Present Mike came outside and yelled about 5 minutes remaining. It was at that moment Nezu presented All Might with a red button to press to release the big-ass 0-pointers throughout the exam. As people saw the robots they all ran away which was expected. What the staff was looking for was if anyone helped others during this time and got them out of the way from the robot or at least attempted to slow the robot down for others to escape. 2. Then that where things went a bit wrong. Snipe called out that one girl had gotten trapped under some rubble and was in the robot's path. The shut-off system isn't picking her up. It's only seeing the rubble as an obstruction to its path and will run over it since it's not registering her body under it. Power Loader said as he got up and moved to the computer to stop the robot. Then the computers alerted to a hack that was ongoing. Someone hacked into the robot. Nezu helped me force them out. All Might go stop the rob. Before Power Loader could finish Izuku was out the door and went flying. All Might didn't move since he knew Izuku would get there just as fast as him. If he didn't make it then All Might wouldn't make it. As Nezu and Power Loader were forcing the hacker out, The other staff watched as Purple-Head Kid run over to the girl and start getting her out. He was slowly getting the rubble off her and finally finished as the robot was feet away. As he picked her up and started to move, Izuku came flying in and just slammed right into the robot and forced it backward, and he ripped right through it as the metal gave in and broke. This caused the head to explode and come to a stop. Izuku didn't even go down towards the students because he didn't want any of them identifying him. He quickly made his way to the control room as he saw Recovery Girl making her way on the field since it was time to end the exam regardless. Once he arrived back in the control room, he got on a computer and started to help Nezu and Power Loader force the hacker out. One of the special subjects that Izuku was taught by Nezu during his 2 previous years was coding and hacking. He wasn't as good as Nezu, but he was on par with Power Loader already. With all 3 of them, they forced the hacker out quicker and sealed the system. Izuku made some notes on the actions of the hacker and passed them to Nezu. "I got to agree, it was the work of a quirk that hacked us. Someone has some type of quirk to access technology and has the ability to block portions of systems since they blocked us from tracking it back towards them," Nezu stated. The staff would need to have a meeting about this before they left. 7. Soon they got to work on grading the physical exam for any rescue points that could be awarded. Izuku saw that Kachan had only villain points and shook his head. He's always put defeating the villains above saving since he believes it leads to the same result, which isn't false, but oh well, Izuku thought. They then got to Shinso points. He had 15 villain points, which wouldn't be enough to pass since the current threshold was at 36 points for the lowest current score for the 36th place, since they had 4 recommendation students like normal. They then started to look over his noted points by the system and he earned 20 points total for those spots. This brought him to 35 points, which meant that Shinso was 1 point under the needed to tie the 36th placer. They were about to move on when Izuku realized they didn't get to his last action. "Wait, we're not done with Shinso. He did save the girl from the zero-pointer robot. Yes, I'm the one that stopped it, but he did get her from the rubble and was already moving away before I stopped it. He should receive points for that," Izuku stated, and they realized they had indeed forgotten it due to everything that happened since everyone had turned their focuses quickly on the hack. They then reviewed the video and he indeed has already gotten the girl out and was moving away with her before Izuku arrived. The staff gave him 30 points total for that, which meant Shinso scored a total of 65 points. This placed him in 5th place with Itsuka Kendo, who also scored the same amount of points. They then moved on to the other exam takers and took about another 2 hours to finish. Soon they had all their new 40 students, with 4 of the 40 being recommendation students. 1. The staff then moved to the staff room to talk about the hack and what to do. The staff was in a heated debate. Izuku then spoke up. "I think me and Aizawa should look into the underground world for a bit and see if we can find anyone responsible for it or any organization that is gearing up for another attack on us. You don't hack into UA to screw with the entrance exam and not have other plans. It seemed like they wanted to ruin our image by having a student killed. This might be the prelude to more attacks," Izuku stated, and the staff went silent at that. The idea that someone was starting to wage war on UA would be devastating. Indeed, Aizawa, Izuku, both of you will start looking into this matter in the underground world. See if you can find anything that would point towards more attacks or an organization that has its aim on us," Nezu said as he dismissed the meeting. Izuku and Aizawa talked about what to do. They decided that Izuku would take the lead, mainly since Aizawa is more well known in the underground. If Izuku started to poke around, they might see him as a vigilante due to his night function on his suit, and this could give them an advantage on finding some information for any info brokers or criminals that might be a bit more loose-lip. 3rd POV. Izuku had gathered some of his personal belongings and had left his mother's home. He explained to her that he would be shifting to some night patrols to look into a matter for UA with the help of Aizawa. He didn't want anyone following him back home and would be staying at Aizawa's home since it was harder to find. Inko agreed easily but made him promise to call once a day to let her know that he is still fine. As such, that is how Izuku found himself in Aizawa's home for the next month before the school started. Izuku would still work out at the warehouse, but he would now do night patrols instead of doing patrols during the day. He still did 1 or 2 patrols during the day during this time to keep a presence but did all of his other patrols at night. Aizawa had taken him out and they started to question thugs and criminals on the streets as they caught them. Izuku was creating another persona of being a vigilante to help them trick some criminal and info brokers into providing information. It took them a few weeks but they had gotten Izuku's image out to the criminals and then one day an info broker approached Izuku. Izuku was wearing a large hood and cape over his outfit to hide most of it in his face so people wouldn't connect him to his daytime looks. This info broker wasn't any big-time one but he did have his use that night. The info broker approached Izuku about selling information to him at a cheap rate for the first time. Izuku decided to try and get whatever they could out of him without forcing the information out since it would kill any future chances of getting information easier just by buying it. As such, Izuku acted his part. You say you sell information, then I want information on someone that could hack into government files for me. More so UA itself. I'm after someone for a personal reason and they are connected to that school and the school has the information I need but I can't exactly force my way into that school. So can you provide me with a list of hackers that are capable enough for such a job? Izuku asked. The broker thought for a few moments. I have a few names but one of them recently disappeared a month ago and hasn't been heard from. The broker stated and this interested Izuku but he couldn't really dig much without tipping the guy off. I'll take information on all of them even the one that disappeared. I'll work my way on the list and see if any will meet the specific details of my job. Izuku stated and pulled the money out to pay for the information. The broker pulled out a phone and sent it to the number that Izuku provided. The number went to a burner phone that Izuku bought for this purpose. 1. Once Izuku had the information and verified it he left after providing the money to the info broker and saved his contact details for future use. Izuku went back to Aizawa and they talked about what Izuku had gained. He mentioned that one hacker went Mia about the time of the hack of the UA. We might have found the individual hacker. He could have been killed off by his employer or they still have him on the payroll and keeping him hidden. Izuku stated. Aizawa agreed and sent the hacker's codename to the other underground heroes he knew for them to start digging into the person and trying to find them. Aizawa and Izuku worked hard over the remaining month before UA started and tried to gather as much information as they could on their case. They did find some unsettling rumors that were floating around as they got closer to the start of UA. There was talk amongst the criminals that they spied on that an organization was gathering a lot of manpower for some large operation but they had no direct evidence on the intended target of the organization. They did find out that the hacker was associated with this group though when the criminals were talking about the organization flaunting their abilities when they used the hack on UA as proof of their power. This tied the attack to an organization and gave them an idea that they might be attacked again but had no direct evidence to prove it though. They learned the name of the organization was the League of Villains. 2. The two of them returned to Aizawa's home and called it quits on looking into it currently. They only had 1 week left before the school started and would need to rely on the other heroes to keep digging. They also needed to update the staff and government on the possible threat. As such, that is how Izuku found himself with Aizawa in front of the staff of UA and the detective. He was here representing the government and the police. The meeting started and they talked about what was found. We know pretty much who the hacker was. The problem is finding them will likely not happen. On our search, we did find out that there is an organization that did pay the hacker to do the attack on UA. Izuku stated and Aizawa followed up by talking about the rest of it. As it stands, we found the name of the organization to be the League of Villains and they are currently gathering a lot of manpower for some large-scale attack on another target. It's unknown if we are the target or will it be somewhere else. Aizawa stated. Everyone was glad they at least had a name now but didn't know much more than that. They could only keep searching and hope they find them before they attack for a second time. The detective said he would alert the government and the police to start looking into anything connected with the League of Villains. The staff meeting was dismissed and all of the other staff except those that knew of One for All left. Well, we can only keep looking into it and see how it goes. Everyone needs to keep their guard up and be mindful. Nezu stated. All Might then asked Izuku how his control has been going over the summer break. Izuku stated that he had just recently pushed from 85% to 90% in the past few days and needed to let his body adjust to power. The compact muscles training was starting to show real results in this stage of his control. He was ahead of schedule a bit since they had wanted him to hit 90% by the end of the first semester, but he had taken the last month of the summer break and ran with it whenever he wasn't out on patrol. As such, the results paid off. 9. They were all glad that he was approaching the 100% mark, since things looked like it wouldn't be simple this coming year and there might be some chaos brewing in the underworld. Izuku and they got up and left the meeting room. Izuku returned home to spend the last week of summer break with each other. Izuku also checked in with Kachan and talked to him about his results. Kachan had taken first place with 77 points. Kachan flaunted it, but Izuku just laughed on the inside a bit, since Kachan still hasn't realized about the hero points, which meant that he did have the possibility of surpassing Izuku's score if he had figured those out, or at least saved people from other robots while gaining points. Izuku wondered when Kachan would ever figure that out. Izuku congratulated Kachan for doing such a good job, and Kachan celebrated the fact that he had higher points than Izuku did without ever being told about the rescue points, since Izuku never mentioned them, nor does any online forum or media source mention them when it talks about All Might's record. Ua just listed Izuku's hero name in an update and the total points he had, which were 5 points under All Might's, which most people overlooked Izuku's score due to All Might's points. Ua doesn't split the points up when they release the records to the public. Izuku just let Kachan have his fun. Remember, you will need to learn how to work with teams, Kachan. You can't do everything alone in this world, Izuku said as he remembered the incident and how he would be dead if his brothers weren't there. Kachan just shrugged as they moved to a different topic. Kachan really respected Izuku but always had trouble listening to others sometimes. Kachan also never learned of Izuku's involvement in the Three Misfit tragedy. That tragedy had become widely known and talked about, though the identities of the hero in trainings were never released by Izuku's request, which the government respected. As such, Kachan didn't know that Izuku was talking from experience when he stated that people need to work together since they can't always win alone. 7. Soon Izuku went back to his home and spent more time with his mother. The week was coming to an end and it would be time to return to school. Izuku was itching to go back since he's been busy and hasn't had time to sit down at the memorial site and just relax with his brothers. The last day came to an end and Izuku went to sleep early to wake up early and arrive at the school to get to work. The next morning came and Izuku headed off to the school just in basic outdoor clothing. He did not change into his Ua uniform since Izuku kept his hero outfit, school uniform, gym uniform, and some other clothing that he wears throughout the day at school or for going out in public in his official classroom that he hardly uses anymore. It became more of a personal storage room for himself and a room to sleep in for Aizawa or himself when they want to escape everyone. Also, the staff stopped requiring him to wear the school uniform when he didn't want to, and he only needed to wear it to official events or meetings that had outside parties that didn't belong to the school. Izuku was walking into the school grounds when he was called out. He turned around and he saw the blue-haired kid from the entrance exam. I believe his name was Iida, Tenya, Izuku thought. The kid walked up to Izuku and called him out for not wearing his uniform to school. Izuku just felt down with him and just turned around and walked away while the kid was still calling him out. The kid froze when Izuku did this and was stunned. Soon Izuku found himself at the pond location and sat down on the bench as he looked over the water. Izuku decided to light a small fire in the fireplace since he still had about 40 minutes before classes started. After a few minutes, Izuku heard a voice calling for him. He turned around to his right side and saw Nezu standing on the seat at the end of the table drinking some tea. I still wonder where you pull that tea from, Izuku commented. Nezu just looked at him and then stated, I don't know. Where do you pull your notebooks from? Nezu asked with a grin, and Izuku just stated he didn't know and left it at that with a small grin on his face. Can I help you, sir? Izuku asked. Nezu looked over the pond and then back to Izuku. This is your last year with us. I just wanted you to know that even after you graduate you are welcome to the campus at any time you want. You don't need a reason to come visit the pond. Just come when you want to. Nezu stated as he sipped his tea. The death of the boys would always leave a sour taste in Nezu's mouth. He didn't like many humans due to his past, but Izuku and those two boys showed that humans could be so much more. They reminded him why he became the principal of UA in the first place. To change humanity one child at a time. 32. Izuku thanked him and then asked what all they had planned for the first day. Overall, the assembly will happen like normal. You don't need to come since I know you will likely go spy or join the test that Aizawa will do for his class. Outside of that, the first day is normally short. If you could help do some paperwork with the other staff, it would be helpful. Also, keep All Might out of trouble. God, we know he can easily get into it just as much as you do. Nezu stated, and Izuku just laughed at that comparison. Both he and his master always did find trouble. Izuku thanked him and Nezu gave him a basic schedule. It was when 1A and 1B had their specific classes, so Izuku knew where they should all be. Oh, before I leave, here, Nezu said as he pulled out a card and gave it to Izuku. It was a hero license. The commission broke under pressure from All Might, Gang Orc, and UA. They approved of providing you a hero license without you taking the actual exam due to your current record. You have a high arrest and case solved rate that can be compared to those in the top 10, but you kept it on the down low. They also saw the video of your fight with All Might and were impressed and happy to find out that you were All Might's protege. All Might used that as a final push that forced their hand. They want you in the public eye more now after learning that fact, and making you a full hero will allow you to be ranked, and with your current ranking, they expect you to break into the top ranks at the end of this semester when they announce the next ranking. Nezu stated. Izuku was shocked. He didn't think he would get his full hero license without taking the actual exam itself. Thank you, sir, Izuku stated as he had a tear going down his eye. I wish they could have been here, Izuku said with a sob. Nezu just placed his hand on Izuku's back and rubbed it. After a few more minutes, Nezu left to return to this office to get ready for the start of the day. 21. Izuku sat outside for a bit longer before he got up and moved towards the school. He had his educational classes done, obtained a teaching certification, and now had his full hero license. Izuku felt accomplished but also felt empty at the same time since his brothers weren't there to enjoy it with him. Going need to talk to Hound Dog again, Izuku thought as he made his way towards the 1A classroom. Izuku decided to sneak into the roof panels and watch them and see if any of them notice. They do have a few people with quirks that boost their hearing. They better notice me and Aizawa, Izuku thought as he placed himself in position and kept his breathing and noise to a limit. The entire class was in the room already. Izuku could see Kachan, Shinso, Iida, Todoroki, and all of the other students. None of them have noticed Izuku even though he is looking into the room since he moved the roof part a bit out of his way. Aizawa was also sitting in the door as he listened to them talk. Aizawa did notice Izuku though. Aizawa then interrupted the girl with the zero-gravity quirk who was talking to Shinso, who looked uncomfortable with human interaction. Sit down and shut up. You have wasted 20 seconds and that is irrational, Aizawa stated as he drew everyone's attention onto him. They all froze at seeing him in a sleeping bag. He then got up and they all ran to their seats. I'm Aizawa, Shota, your homeroom teacher for 1A. You will address me as Aizawa-sensei, do you understand? Now get these gym uniforms and go change and meet me on the PE field, he stated. Everyone was frozen still in shock because they didn't expect this to happen at all. 2. Aizawa stated his demand again and they got moving. Soon all of the students made their way out on the PE field. Izuku had left the room right after them without being noticed and Aizawa just shook his head. Izuku made it out to the field before them and hid in the tree. Aizawa and Izuku were wondering if the students would ever notice him. After everyone was outside, the girl known as Uraraka asked why they weren't going to the assembly that was about to happen. Aizawa just stated that it was a waste of time and he could run his class as he wants. Yay, that assembly is where Nezu tortures people by talking for so long, Izuku thought. 4. Today we will be doing a quirk apprehension test and you all will be allowed to use your quirks to complete these tests, Aizawa said as he called Bakugo up to throw the ball. Bakugo threw the ball and it went 705.2 meters. The class cheered and some mentioned how it was going to be fun and cool. This made Aizawa snap and Izuku twitch. Heroics is not about fun or be cool. They both thought in their mind. Oh, fun, you say. I see. Let's make it more fun than before. The person that places last will be expelled and judged with no potential. How is that for being fun and cool? Aizawa stated. The class was shocked at this statement. Uraraka complained that the rule wasn't fair. Aizawa just goes on another rant about the world being unfair and that it's the hero's job to combat unfairness. Izuku had a hard time not jumping down and saying anything in those moments as he had flashbacks to his class and his brother's death. The world is truly unfair and it will be best that they learn it now instead of paying the price later. Izuku thought. 2. Soon the test was going on and everyone had finished doing their tests. The boy with purple balls on his head placed last. Aizawa dismissed them and said it was just a logical ruse. He told them all that they had their schedules and more information for them in the classroom and they could leave for the day. As such, the students breathed a sigh of relief at not being expelled and they all went and got changed before heading home for the day. This concluded their first day of UA. 3rd POV. The first day ended without much fanfare after the test. Izuku went to the staff room and met up with Aizawa. Loved your rant about unfairness. Hopefully, they will learn that heroic life isn't cut and dry as the media makes it. Izuku stated and Aizawa just agreed with Izuku on his statement and sat down and started to drink some coffee. I'm surprised you didn't axe the purple midget though, Izuku stated. Aizawa thought for a few moments. If his behavior can be corrected then he will be fine. There are currently no reports of him actually doing anything physical, it's just him being an idiot pervert currently. So just keep an eye on him and if he does something that crosses the line we can deal with him. Aizawa stated. Izuku just nodded his head as the other staff just came into the room and greeted them. Izuku asked how the assembly went and they all said it was like normal. 2. Everyone gets started on the paperwork that they need to finish for the classes that will happen tomorrow while All Might passed Izuku the plan for the heroic training class that he will hold on the next day. Izuku looked it over and saw that the students will be working on a search and rescue training simulation. The idea is that they need to locate hostages that the other team will be guarding and save them. If the hostages get killed then the round is over and if time runs out the fake bomb will explode killing the hostages. Heroes win by defeating the villains, by touching the hostages, or by forcing the other team to surrender. Overall it was a decent plan. Izuku pointed out some flaws that they could exploit as the villains could just turn around and kill the hostages right away. All Might made some corrections to the rules he would impose and they decided that it was good enough. Aizawa just nodded his head at the fact that the lesson didn't sound like it would turn out horrible now since Izuku corrected errors in it. Izuku just chuckled while All Might pouted at Aizawa's assessment of him. 1. Izuku finished the stuff that he needed to do and just went to the pond for half an hour before he went to the warehouse to do some training. Izuku has never really used the gyms on campus since he always had the private warehouse to himself to train at or to train with his brothers, so he's never had a need to use the gyms on campus. He has used the other training grounds but nothing else outside of that. The night went by quickly and Izuku did the normal patrol routes that he would do during school time. It felt different since when he handed the criminals over to the police he could say with 100% fact that he was a hero and mean it and not mean a provisional hero. The cops that he normally worked with were shocked when he showed his full license. They asked what agency he worked at now that he was a full hero or was he planning to make his own. I have been working at the same agency since my second year. First, it was Gang Orc during my first year, then the one I'm at. It will likely make public news sooner or later, so just keep watching. Izuku said. Izuku went about his day and checked over his group chat with other heroes. They were still trying to gain information about what the so-called League of Villains was doing. They still haven't found much more. They only confirmed the fact that they were slowly gathering more and more people for some operation. This had set a lot of people on edge due to the number of villains they were gathering. The overall ranks were assumed low, but if you combine a large amount then it becomes dangerous no matter what. The next day came and Izuku walked onto campus again and had run into Ida again, who proceeded to try and correct him on his uniform. This time though Uraraka was standing with him and looked confused on why Izuku wasn't wearing a uniform. Izuku just looked at him and stated a simple line. Loosen up. You don't know if I'm approved to be like this or not, so loosen up. Izuku said as he walked away to get ready for this day. Izuku dropped his stuff off in the staff room and he and All Might went to a private room to talk. My boy. I wanted to talk to you about our plans for this year. As you know, I'm pushing 4 hours right now in my time limit. I've kept myself limited in how much time I used since Gran Torino would beat me up if I pushed it, so it saved me some time. However, I would like to start introducing you to others as my protege and state the fact that you work at my agency and will take it over once this year is over. All Might stated. It was a fair request. Izuku has made a large name for himself already, and that is what he wanted before being connected to All Might in the public, so Izuku just agreed with the request. Then I would like you to come in your hero outfit to 1A and 1B battle trial. We are doing a joint training session where Aizawa and Vlad King will be there. I want you to arrive and have everyone introduced to you at that moment. All Might stated and Izuku agreed to it. Izuku went out to the pond for a bit of time before he did some laps around the school to get some exercise in before the joint training class today. Soon the day passed and it was time for Izuku to get moving towards the school. The students of 1B and 1A have had a normal day for the most part due to it being normal classes. They were all sitting in their individual classes when their homeroom teachers walked in and started to explain what would be going on next. Aizawa glared at his kids and then started to talk. You will be having your first heroic foundational class today. You will also be doing this with 1B and have joint training with them. As such, get your outfits on and go to ground beta and await for your heroic teacher. Aizawa said as everyone got up and got their outfits and left. Aizawa then went to ground beta and waited for them all. Soon his students and 1B all arrived at the training grounds. Good day students, your heroic teacher will be here soon, stated Vlad King. The students were wondering who it would be. There was a rumor that All Might would be teaching here, but no one could confirm it. Then they heard a loud movement come down the hallway and then something or someone landed in front of them quickly. Ahaha, we are here, yelled out a loud voice that everyone recognized as All Might. The dust cleared and there stood All Might and someone else. Izuku was standing in his daytime version of his outfit. Again, ignore the info about the black whip. Everyone was thrilled to see All Might, but everyone except 2 didn't know who the person in green was. Then 2 voices called out. Aniki. Kachan said, surprised to see his older brother figure in his class since he was a third-year student, and then Shinso called out Izuku's hero name. Fulcrum. Shinso stated. Izuku looked around at everyone and then waved. All Might then started to talk. Hello everyone, I am your foundational heroics teacher for your time here. Some of you appear to know this man next to me while others don't, which is fine. I would like you all to meet one of the youngest heroes, Fulcrum, who has recently obtained his full hero license. He is also a third-year student here that will be helping both of your classes throughout your first year. All Might stated and let them process the information. Bakugo was shocked to learn about Izuku getting his full hero license already. Shinso wasn't, since he was an avid follower of Fulcrum and saw the change in his hero status from provisional to a full licensed hero. 14 As the information took hold, All Might decided to drop the next knowledge bomb. Though you will all see him with me much more often now since we decided to the public our connection. I would like you all to meet Fulcrum, my personal protege and my successor to my agency since I will retire in the next few years likely. All Might stated. This information shocked all of the students, but none of the staff reacted, which the students noticed. Hands went up with questions and All Might knew he would need to answer some. He pointed towards Shinso. Since when has he been your protege? Shinso asked. He has been my protege roughly 1 year before arriving at UA. I noticed the signs of his quirk coming in late and helped him train, and the connection between us grew from there. We've kept it hidden since he wanted to be known as his own hero, but with my retirement approaching day by day, we need to make the public know that he is my protege now so they can get used to the idea of him replacing me as the next symbol of peace, since he equals me in power and might even grow far stronger than me. All Might stated, and that last fact shocked the students of someone near their age equaling All Might in power or growing stronger than him. All Might then pointed at Bakugo. Anki, why didn't you tell me? Izuku just rubbed his head and shrugged. It didn't come up. Also, you would ask for so many autographs, Izuku said. Kachan just pouted a bit, but others likely couldn't tell he was. All Might then kept moving to the next person. Most questions were basic, but then they hit Todoroki's question. What is your quirk and what did All Might mean by late bloomer? Todoroki asked. In regards to the late bloomer, it means what it means. I did not get my quirk at the age of 4 like everyone else. Instead, I got it closer to the end of my last year of middle school. Izuku stated, and everyone was shocked. Then Izuku kept talking. My quirk itself has a body enchantment aspect and a floating aspect. I call my quirk superpower since it does different things, and I could still have another aspect that I don't know about since I got it so late to start with. My strength is still growing, and the last fight me and All Might had I was close to winning, but his experience turned the tide of the battle. Izuku stated. All the students were once again shocked. They didn't know what to do with this information of having Fulcrum helping their classes out in addition to having All Might. Izuku though noticed a strange look in Todoroki's eyes and made a mental note of looking into it later. 12 Soon the battle simulation got started and the two classes were mixed together. Izuku had suggested this to All Might since he had first planned to do class versus class for hero versus villains, but Izuku suggested mixing them together since it was still early in the year and connections could be made between the classes which would allow class bonding before bad blood got created. All Might accepted this idea and ran with it. As such, most of the students ended up with someone from the other class and some didn't. There was this one kid that started to annoy Izuku with his comments. His name was Monoma, Nato. He made comments like 1B would show they're better than 1A. Izuku just reached a point of not staying silent anymore after one particular comment. Watch. The day you 1A bastards face a real villain, you will all be in fear and cower like children. 1B students will be flawless and not get injured when we face villains in the future. Monoma stated. The next match hadn't started yet when Izuku called Monoma out. Nato Monoma. Do you take the hero course as a joke? Izuku asked with a smile on his face. Everyone except the teachers looked confused at his question. I asked you a question. Do you take the hero course as a joke because so far from what I've seen you are? Though, it is only the second day, you should still take this training with seriousness and stop wasting your time on whatever this pitiful rivalry or ego complex you have going on right now. Izuku stated. Monoma didn't know how to respond. 3. I'll take your silence as your answer that you will stop this stupidity, or I will recommend to Nezu that you be dealt with, Izuku stated, and this invoked a response out of the student. You don't have the authority to do that, Monoma stated while shaking a bit. He started to realize that he might have screwed up. Oh, you can ask any of the staff here that I do. I do have a desk in the staff room. I'm treated as if I was a full staff member, and I'm highly doubtful Nezu wouldn't heed a recommendation from me and take it under massive consideration. So consider this your warning, Monoma. Get this ego or whatever attempt at a pitiful rivalry you want to start over. It's okay to have a rivalry, it's not okay to have a toxic one though. Do I make myself clear? Izuku stated. Monoma nodded his head and kept his mouth silent. Good, now let's get back to the class, shall we? Izuku said with a bright smile on his face. Everyone could only think of the massive mood swing. Even Bakugo was shaking a bit at the pressure they felt off Izuku at that moment. 5 Soon the simulations went by and the end of the training came to an end. Izuku smiled at everyone and waved them off as they left. Shinso came up to Izuku and asked about the hint he gave. I'm assuming the answer was saving people, right? I saw I got points when I saved that girl, though I didn't know that was the answer at the time. Shinso said, and Izuku confirmed it was the answer. Yup. That is how I got only 5 points below All Might's recorded. I was wanting to tie it, Izuku said with a small pout. All Might just laughed a bit. Soon everyone else left and All Might and Izuku decided to go do the reports from the class before heading out on a patrol together to get people noticing the connection. Soon they finished the paperwork and then got moving out. Izuku went to the pond for a few minutes before he went and met All Might at the entrance. The students were walking out of the school right as they walked towards the gate and they waved at everyone. People were taking pictures of them as they walked by. Soon they jumped away and went into the town to start making their presence known. Within half an hour, Izuku's notification from his fan club went off with an announcement of Izuku being spotted with All Might and was questioning their connection. All Might saw Izuku's fan club page a few times, and once they stopped to take a break on a tall roof, they had All Might go on his social media and follow Izuku and then follow Izuku's fan club. They both posted a picture that one of the fans posted to their page and both tweeted the same thing with a few wording differences. The tweet read, "Nice photo a fan took while I was out on patrol with my protege #Fulcrum." And in Izuku's case it read, "Nice photo a fan took while I was out on patrol with my master #All Might." Within a few minutes, the internet was set up in a blaze and everyone was looking over Izuku's fan club page and social media page. Within the hour, Might Tower had released a statement confirming the information online and confirmed that Izuku has been All Might's personal protege for a few years, but they wanted Fulcrum to make some sort of name for himself before the connection between the two was announced, which happened today since he now has his full hero license even though he is just starting his third year at UA. This information sent everyone into many conversations. All of Japan was now paying attention to Fulcrum, the rising star who turned out to be All Might's protege. 5 Though in one house a certain fire hero was pissed to learn that All Might had such a talented protege that was already rising up in popularity, as he feared that his rank would be harmed with how big Fulcrum name had been before, but now it would grow at an alarming rate due to All Might's influence on his rank as well. 21 In one dark bar, a person grabbed a glass and broke it as he watched the news about his most hated person having a protege, and if we go through a TV screen we could hear a low sound being made by someone who became interested in what he heard. "So you found a protege and he's already grown as strong as you All Might. I see my plans will become far more complicated the moment you all realize I'm still alive," stated the man who made the sound from before. This public appearance from Izuku and All might have started a chance reaction of gears to start moving. Fate now had its hand back on the wheel and some events would become unavoidable while others would be avoided. 3rd POV. A week has passed since Izuku has met the two classes. He has dropped by in their classes a few more times but was focused on his patrols. Izuku's popularity has skyrocketed after the public announcement of him being All Might's protege. The public also loved the fact that Izuku had set off on his own before the announcement was made. It made his fanbase, even more, stronger than most of the top 10 heroes. Everyone was projecting him to rank in the top 10 once the new polls came out later in the year. Izuku was currently sitting at the pond and looked at his friends' faces that were crafted into the fireplace. For some reason, I have the feeling again. The same feeling from that day. Izuku muttered to the fireplace since no one was around him. The first years had asked Izuku where he goes during his day when he's at UA, but Izuku just changed the topic since he didn't want others here unless they found it themselves and would respect the site. 2. I promise you 2. None of them will go to the other side before me. Not when I'm around them, Izuku said as he placed his hand on the fireplace faces and then put the fire out. Izuku then headed to the school building. He wanted to inform Nezu of the feeling. He refused to not warn others. Izuku then made it to the staff room and found all of the staff were there also, and so was Nezu. The lunch period just got started. "Nezu, we need to be on guard today. Something will happen," Izuku stated. Everyone tensed up and Nezu asked for an explanation. "I don't have proof. It's the same feeling from that day when they died. We all felt like something was going to happen right before it did, and we were met with the destruction and then the fight with the villains only a few hours later. I have the same feeling as I do from that day, and I can't stay silent when something might happen." "Not again," Izuku said. The staff knew he didn't have proof, but the instinct of a hero was really powerful sometimes. As such, they got on guard. Ectoplasm sent clones of himself out around the school campus to provide the time in the event of an attack, and the staff started talking about point of entry when the alarms went off. "Shit, that's the intruder alarm. Someone breached the main gate," one of the staff said as they all got battle ready and spread out across the school with ectoplasm flooding the front with clones. They found it was the media that broke in. Izuku walked out and the media started to ask questions. Izuku walked up to them and just powered up one for all and clapped his hands really hard. This caused a large shockwave to go out and knock some of them down. "Silence yourselves now. You all just broke into UA by destroying the gate, sending all the heroes in here on high alert, thinking we would be defending our students from a large-scale villain attack, since only powerful or large mass of villains would be brave enough to do a direct assault on the main building. As such, you will silence yourself and wait for the police to arrive to question you and determine if they will arrest you or not. Do I make myself clear?" Izuku yelled with a damn smile on his face. The reporters just froze at this statement and tried to speak, but Izuku just glared down at them. Nezu had recorded the incident and was streaming it live, so the media couldn't pull any stunts on them. Izuku instructed them to line up against the wall outside and wait for the police. After 1 hour of dealing with everything, Izuku headed back into the school. The staff had discussed and determined it wasn't likely a reporter that did the gate. I still have a bad feeling. I feel like the UA hack, and this is the prelude for the league. I know we can't connect this to them. It's just a gut feeling. Nezu, I know 1A has a trip to the USJ today. I'm going with them, and I would like an emergency beacon to be given to me. I want it constantly sending a signal, and if it stops then you will know we are in danger. Izuku stated. Nezu just agreed and had Power Loader prepare the beacon. Izuku did learn of the panic in the lunchroom and was proud of the 1A students and how they handled it. Izuku though was annoyed with his master. The one thing that something might go wrong and you were late. Dear God Master. Izuku thought. Izuku was currently in his hero gear standing next to the memorial. He kneed in front of it and prayed, please, watch over me and the students. I will do my best to keep them all safe, and I won't let them repeat our fate, my brothers. Not while I am alive and kicking with breath in my lungs. Izuku thought. Nezu came up to his side. It's about time for the USJ trip. Didn't want you running late, Izuku. I know you still have the feeling of something going wrong, and I trust that feeling, but unless we have direct proof we can't just cancel the event and then cancel again if they try again. But as I was saying, if something goes wrong, don't give up. I don't mean giving up fighting for them. I mean if the situation turns really bad and you're at your last leg. Don't give up. We will come for you, Nezu said without a smile on his face. Izuku looked at Nezu and leaned down and then hugged the principal, shocking him. I trust you. I will hold out until there is no breath left in me. I refuse to let them suffer mine and my brother's fates, Izuku said as he walked away and headed towards the bus loading area. He soon found the 1A students boarding the bus right as he got there. Aizawa looked at Izuku, who just nodded his head. They got on the bus after the students and sat down. Soon the bus was moving and they were on the trip towards the USJ. Izuku had asked them who became the president and vice president of the class. It turns out Yaorazu was made president and Iida made vice president. As they were driving, Sue, or so she said to call her, asked Izuku a question. Sir, I have a question, she asked, and Izuku told her to just call him his hero name. Shoot, Sue. He stated. I'm a blunt person, so please don't be offended. We know you are in 3A, but from what I've heard there is number 3B or anyone else in 3A. What happened to everyone else? She asked. Everyone went silent as they heard these rumors also, but didn't have much information. Not even Bakugo did, since Izuku never really talked about his school life after the first year. He always wondered why he would never talk about it. Aizawa sat up quickly and looked at everyone. This caught their attention at how fast their teacher got up. I'll answer. The overall crop for that year wasn't to a good standard. As such, the class size went from 40 total in the two classes to just 20 students in 1A. However, all but 3 survived all of my explosions from the hero course, Aizawa stated, and everyone paled at the fact that he had expelled nearly everyone in an entire class. Kirishima just had to remember about the 3 remaining students. If 3 made it past you, where are the other 2 besides Fulcrum? He asked. Aizawa didn't answer. He just looked at Izuku, and everyone could see guilt in his eyes, and they wondered why. 7. The bus arrived at the USJ though, and Izuku got up and moved past Aizawa, who didn't say anything. Once he got to the door he stopped. It's time to go. We're here, Izuku said in a strained tone as he stepped off the bus while being caught in his memories. Izuku wasn't used to people asking. The people that knew of the fact that there were 3 without watching his first year all just assumed everyone but him got expelled. He wasn't used to talking about it to people that didn't already know. Aizawa turned to his students and said in a sad tone. Just don't ask. One day you will learn, but not right now. Leave it for now, Aizawa said as he directed everyone off the bus. Bakugo looked at the back of his older brother and wondered what happened. What happened to you, Aniki? Bakugo thought. The students made their way into the USJ building and started to listen to the Pro Hero 13 as they started to talk about the use of quirks for combat but the use of quirks for rescue operations. As they listened in, they noticed Fulcrum was looking around a lot. Then they heard him talk to their teacher. "Eraserhead, get them out of here now. We're under attack." He yelled, and everyone was confused, including the teachers, until the lights flickered and then a portal opened up down in the plaza. 11. They watched as a large group of villains walked into the plaza and stared them down. Fulcrum got in front of them at the edges of the stairs. The students thought this was all an act that they were putting on for training, but their teacher's voice cut through. "This isn't a show, it's real. 13, get the students out of here," he said as he looked prepared to jump down, but Fulcrum stopped him. "No. Go with them. You can help them better by stopping any quirk that they try to use on the students. They also have the warp user, which might try to separate everyone, which you can stop if he comes after them," Fulcrum stated. Bakugo tried to tell him to leave with them, and Shinso tried as well. All of the students tried, but he shook his head. "If no one stalls them, then they will follow right behind us and attack. Someone has to stay and stop them. Also, I'm likely the only one that can stop that creature. I don't like the feeling I'm getting from it," Fulcrum stated. The villains could hear this though. "Ahaha, I'm doubtful you can stop it," yelled the villain with hands on him. Izuku just decided to push the buttons to get information. "Oh. And why is that?" Izuku asked and got an answer. "This thing was created for the sole purpose of killing All Might in his prime. It has multiple quirks after all," stated the villain. At that sentence, Izuku and Aizawa's blood went cold. Impossible. He should be dead, Izuku thought. The warp user tried to stop the other villain from giving information away, but it didn't stop him from gloating. "All Might was meant to be here. That is why we stole the schedule after all. Oh well. I wonder if he will come if we slaughter the kids," stated the villain. Izuku just turned to Aizawa, who looked at him. "Sensei. Leave with them now. Tell All Might what you learned here today. I'll hold as long as I can," Izuku said as he walked down the steps. Aizawa was filled with dread. Again he has to stand aside and do nothing as his students go to their possible death. And this time his last remaining student, Form 3A, was walking into likely a trap that was set by a 200-year-old monster that was aiming for All Might but was getting the protege instead. Aizawa just walked back towards the students with his teeth gritted. "Fulcrum, I'm not burying another one of you three. I can't do it again. Do you understand? Not again," Eraserhead yelled as he ran towards his first-year students and pushed them towards the door. Izuku just smiled. "You owe me a fancy lunch, old man," Izuku yelled back as he powered up One for All and float to his current limit of 90% and pushed off the stairs and flew into the villains and started to use his floating fighting style and started to fight. He kept his eye on the creature the entire time and never let it exit his vision. 11. The students tried to protest on leaving, but Eraserhead didn't let them stay. However, it seemed fate didn't seem to work in their favor. The warp user went up and teleported everyone. He got Eraserhead the moment he arrived to prevent him from stopping the warp gates. Izuku just hopped. The school realized the beacon is being blocked because it showed that a radio wave was no longer going out. The fight kept going on as Izuku wiped out all the low-level thugs quite quickly. He then looked over at the main villains and the creature. The villain known as Shigaraki was just scratching his neck as he looked at all of the low-level thugs on the ground. "Damn it, Fulcrum. This was meant for All Might, but I guess killing you will destroy his spirit." "Kill him, Nomu," he yelled. Izuku just watched the Nomu charge at him and blocked the first punch and got sent flying back against the ground. "Damn it. This creature can hit as strong as me and All Might and might even be hitting harder," Izuku thought as his eyes widened. He powered up to his max and just dodged and hit. The blows created shockwaves of air that flew off from them. This went on for about 8 minutes before the students all arrived back at the main area. Eraserhead and 13 also arrived back as well. 13 was gathering the students up while Eraserhead came towards Izuku. "Get the students out of here," Izuku yelled as he took a fist to the face and got sent into the ground, cracking it. He got right back up and dodged a fist and landed a kick into the creature's side. He jumped back next to his teacher and just breathed hard. "Get them out of here. I will keep fighting as long as I can and buy you time," Izuku said. Eraserhead's face just paled at the fact that Izuku wasn't saying he could win. He said he could buy time. "Can't we take this together?" he asked. Izuku looked at him and shook his head. One hit from this and you're done. It's hitting as hard as me or harder. Izuku stated. The hand villain just laughed and talked about the shock absorption quirk and all the other strength quirks and regeneration quirk it had. Izuku just gritted his teeth and thought as the villain gloated. 13 had gathered all the students back up and started to move up the stairs with them. Izuku just charged the creature again and used his floating fighting style to provide him the best benefits he could. If it's absorption, that means it has to have a limit, Izuku thought. He decided to power up past his current limit and he could feel the strain on his body. 2. Izuku just started to increase the speed of his punches and the wind that was generated through people on the ground and pushed them away. He's getting faster than ever before, thought Aizawa as he watched as he moved up the steps with his students. This slugfest kept on for a solid minute when Izuku screamed out. Go beyond plus ultra, he yelled as he slammed a fist into the creature's stomach and it lifted off its feet and into the air. It went flying into the roof and went out of the dome. Everyone was frozen in shock. Damn you, Shigaraki yelled. Calm yourself. He is injured from fighting the Nomu and is tired as well. If we move now with the thugs we can kill him and kill All Might's protege. The warp user stated as any villain that was upcharged at Izuku, who was holding his right arm to his chest. Izuku just stood up with blood running from his forehead from the blow he took to the face from earlier and screamed. Come get me, I refuse to die to such pathic villains. I am Fulcrum from the Misfits. Izuku yelled as he just charged up his quirk even though he was tired and injured from going all out and over his limit. He used his good arm and just threw punches at the people that came and used his floating style to just dodge and glide around people. 4. As a lot of thugs surrounded Izuku, Shigaraki's hand was coming out of a portal next to his head and was about to decay him. Seems I'm coming to meet you sooner than I thought, brothers. Izuku thought as the hand was an inch away from him. Then the hand pulled back as Shigaraki was kicked away by Eraserhead. Izuku's eyes widened as he quickly raised both hands even though he was in pain and crossed his arms and did a wind attack from his crossed arms to blow everyone away from him. Izuku moved and started to fight the villains, and as he was the doors opened and in came all the staff of Ua with All Might. They saw the students and teachers, but they also saw Izuku bloody. Everyone was pissed as their minds went right to the two boys they lost and they refused to lose Izuku. 3. Have fear because I am fucking here, All Might said as he was pissed seeing his boy with blood running down his face and his arm bloodied. He charged down and wiped the villains out quickly as the two main ones warped away. The second Aizawa looked away for a second. The staff quickly arrested all the villains and went and dealt with any in the building. Nezu looked over the students from 1A and told Ectoplasm to guard the students outside. Recovery girl, get to Izuku now, he is bleeding heavily. He fought a creature that could kill him and All Might. Aizawa yelled and this made all the teachers pale. Recovery girl was carried by All Might to Izuku, who was laying on the ground breathing heavily. She looked him over and found his right arm was broken in a few places but wasn't as bad as the first time he broke it when he used the quirk for the first time. Not as bad as the first time you used your quirk. Still bad but not that level. ... I see you have a cracked skull, a few broken ribs. ... I'm healing you now, she said as she finished looking him over. He grunted in pain as his bones went back in place. His body felt sore but no longer in a massive amount of pain. All Might, the creature is somewhere outside towards the back of the USJ. I had to go beyond 100% and force it out. He is back, All Might. He is back. The creature was made to kill you. It had multiple quirks, Izuku stated. Nezu said that they found the creature but it wasn't moving. Izuku responded that it only acted on commands from what he saw, which made Nezu happy that it wouldn't be a current danger since All Might was an idiot and went to his limit today. After resting a bit, Izuku was guided outside by Eraserhead and All Might with Recovery Girl behind them with Nezu. Recovery Girl looked over the students and healed any scrapes or bruises. 36. They all looked at Izuku as he was escorted off into a medical van to be taken back to Ua. All Might went with him while Nezu returned to the students. The media hasn't gotten word of this yet, but the police were already present and the students' statements would be taken at Ua. We will have you taken back on the bus to UA where police will take your statements. As such, please get on the bus so we can get you there, Nezu stated. They all obeyed and Eraserhead went with them as they went back. They were silent, until Bakugo asked the question on their minds. How is he? He asked. He will make it. He was injured but was fully healed by Recovery Girl. He was taken back to Ua to rest, Aizawa said. Sue had to ask one more question though. Sensei, what did you mean at the start when you didn't want to bury another one of the three? She asked and everyone wanted to know. Quote. I'll explain in the classroom but no pushing Fulcrum for details. He still has PTSD and flashbacks to that day, Aizawa stated and they all fell into a silence. Aizawa didn't want to talk about it but they would keep asking questions and he refused to let them go bug Izuku over it. Third POV. Izuku was transferred to the nurse's office to recover and rest before he got up and started to move around. All Might was in the office looking disappointed with himself since he was meant to be at the event and it would have gone so much easier if both he and Izuku had double-teamed the creature. However, what All Might was most concerned about what Izuku said about the creature. He said it had multiple quirks and he also said that he was back. All Might didn't like that. He didn't like that at all. Izuku was currently asleep since Recovery Girl's quirk took a lot of energy out of him. As such, All Might sat in the room and waited. After about 15 minutes he woke up in the living room and groaned. Good to see you awake my boy. All Might stated as he looked over Izuku. Izuku then saw the detective that was on the other side of the room making notes from earlier statements he got from students. He looked over and waved at Izuku. Good, you are awake. I need you to run me through the events. The detective asked and Izuku did. The details were grim. Everything is pointing towards All for One being alive and being back. Soon a staff meeting would be held in regards to the events and Izuku planned to attend since it had become far more important. As such, he got out of bed but was sluggish and had to have All Might and the detective help him get to the staff room. While this was going on, Aizawa was with 1A telling a story. 1. Sensei, are you okay? You have been starting in the air for about 3 minutes now when you said you would explain stuff to us. Uraraka asked. Aizawa snapped out of it and lightly shook his head. Sorry, there is a lot of guilt involved in this. I know I couldn't have done anything but there is a reason I said what I told you all on the first day. Do you remember my words from the test? Aizawa asked. They said a few things but then Bakugo got it. You're talking about how you glared at us when Uraraka talked about the rule being unfair. You said that heroics is unfair, that life is unfair. What does that have to do with this and what was said at the USJ? Bakugo asked. Aizawa nodded his head. Good, you remember. It has everything to do with it. Life is unfair. It is the hero's job to make it fairer for those that we can. However, sometimes life is just unfair and there is nothing to be done. Heroics is not fun. It is not safe. It is deadly and Izuku Midoriya aka Fulcrum learned that at the end of his first year. Aizawa said with his head looking straight at them all. They all tensed up at what was said. Look to the person next to you and then look at the next person next to you. One of them will die before you ever retire if you get lucky and retire. However, for Fulcrum both people to his sides died. Those people were his two friends that would become brothers in all but blood to him. They would do almost everything together. However, fate was not kind to them as it decided to claim their lives and Fulcrum almost went with them that day. Aizawa stated in a sad tone. Bakugo's eyes widened. How did I not know any of this? He thought. The class all had eyes widen. Aizawa then started to talk about the three misfits. These boys were the three individuals that survived the shrunken class from 2 to 1, they survived me expelling everyone else but themselves. As such, they got put onto an advanced track of education and had earned their provisional license at the start of the second semester of their first year. These boys were good. All three of them could take at least one of UA teachers down in a fight of 2v1. 2 teachers against 1 student. Aizawa stated and this surprised everyone at how strong they were for them to take pro heroes on and defeat at least one of them in battle. 4. Before Fulcrum worked with All Might's agency, he and the 2 other brothers wanted to gain experience first before being connected to All Might since the 2 boys were also protégés of All Might. Though they came after Izuku introduced them to All Might, they still earned that title through their determination, willpower, and hard work. As such, They started out in the gang work agency together since they could work so well in a team but also work as individual heroes. Aizawa stated. Then Aizawa went over how the boys' initial work studies went. Shinso even chimed in on how he met Fulcrum and how he got saved from bullies. However, fate was not kind. Do any of you know the tale of the three misfits? Aizawa asked and everyone said they did, and then they realized. The three boys were the three misfits and they all paled since that story was gurgling towards the provisional heroes that stood their ground. I see you all made the connection. Yes, Fulcrum was the third boy from that day where his two brothers died fighting an army of villains. That is why he stood in front of you all. He refuses to let your class suffer his and his brother's fate and have any of you die anytime soon. Aizawa stated. He then asked them if they had any questions and they did, of course. He answered them the best he could. One question though asked about how he recovered. Recovered? You don't exactly recover from watching your two brothers die. The pain dulls over time but you never fully recover. You only get more functional. I will tell you now. There is a memorial here on campus that you will find Izuku at almost always if he is on campus and isn't busy doing something. Don't ever disrespect the memorial site since the last person that did resulted in Izuku beating them up and dragging them to Nezu's office to be expelled. The staff is protective of Izuku since he is the last member of his class and we also all feel guilt towards him losing his brothers even though we couldn't do anything about it. Aizawa stated. The class asked some more questions for the next 10 minutes of Fulcrum's life and time at UA and they found out that he already could leave but choose to stay to help guide the first years so they didn't repeat his and his brother's fates. The class was awed at this and vowed to help him feel wanted and have him enjoy his time with them. Thank you all. After that day he hasn't really made new friends. There weren't many that would approach him since the now second years were afraid of him due to how hostile he was right after the memorial issue. As such, he doesn't have any friends outside of the staff and a few heroes. Aizawa stated and bowed his head to his class since they had decided to make him feel welcomed with their class. Aizawa told them not to go spread the information they learned around since Izuku had the names from the three misfits tragedy blocked from the public and doesn't talk much about his brothers to those that didn't already know. Soon Aizawa dismissed them and said he needed to go to a meeting. Though a few of them asked if they could wait for Fulcrum to wake up. Go home. He is already awake and is waiting for me in the meeting room. The staff has to deal with the fallout from the attack and you all forget he is more or less a staff person. You will all see him when you return, Aizawa said as he directed them to go home. He then made his way to the staff room to find everyone else there already. He looked at Izuku and apologized, which confused Izuku until Aizawa explained. I told my class of you and your brothers. They questioned why I said what I did at the USJ when I said that I refused to bury another one of you three. So they all know and shouldn't bug you with all of their questions about it. Aizawa said and Izuku tensed up for a bit but relaxed. It was going to happen sooner or later but I guess it would do good for them to know it since they just went through this attack. It should help them see why the hero path isn't meant to be fun and cool as the media makes it out to be. At least it will give them perspective on what can happen. Izuku said and turned his head back towards the meeting. At Nezu got up and looked ready to talk. 7. Soon they started to dig into the details of the attack as the detective was talking about it. Gran Torino had also shown up since this was going to be about All for One as well. They talked about how they got in, which they all agreed the break-in was covered by the media. We can use that fact to beat the media back on their questions since they have a hand in this, Izuku stated with a grin. Don't get him wrong, the media was good, but they were also idiots. The staff just shook their heads at Izuku's thoughts. They felt pity for the media. Then they talked about the leaders of the attack and then they brought up to the staff that the so-called leaders were puppet heads. Currently, the so-called leaders are just puppet heads for a bigger villain that is far more dangerous. Do any of you know of the merchant? The merchant of quirks? Nezu asked and they all said it was a myth. It isn't a myth since he is the one that gave me my wound. All Might stated, which made them all pale. Some still tried to deny it but gave in. The creature had multiple quirks which can really only be done by the merchant of quirks or so-called All for One. This creature was made to kill All Might but found the protege instead. Luckily Izuku has the strength that rivals All Might, Otherwise, this would have turned into a massacre of our students since Izuku still got injured. Nezu stated, and the grim reality sat in for the staff at that moment. They came so close to losing an entire class but didn't due to Izuku's will and determination to not give up. They all just thanked Izuku and he waved them off since it was his duty and he wouldn't let the first years repeat his brothers and his fate. Soon they all kept talking about possible plans for the future and Izuku decided to bring an idea up. Nezu, I think it would be good to move the students on campus or at least hero course students first. Since we more or less know All for One has a hand in this, we will need to hunt him down so All Might and I can fight him in a death match. However, until then he could target the students or his so-called successor could aim for our students to make a statement. They did already try to kill someone in the exam. It wouldn't be far-fetched to say they might target a hero student or from school. Izuku stated. The staff just discussed the idea and they talked about if they had the resources. It was determined they did and the dorms could be placed to the side of the main building and that the staff would have a dorm as well. Nezu, where would I stay since there is no real reason to make an entire dorm for one person? Izuku asked and the staff realized the issue. He was the only student of 3A. Simple. You will live with the staff. You already do staff duties and have your full hero license. You really aren't a student anymore except in name only. Nezu stated and they all realized that the statement was true. Izuku agreed to it since he would be near those he cared about though getting his mother to agree would be a struggle. 4. Izuku also decided that he would likely switch to using the gyms on campus more but would decide since the warehouse was still relevantly close to UA and All Might didn't need to use his buff form there. Soon the meeting came to a close and those that knew the truth of One for All stayed. This year is going to be rough, isn't it? Izuku asked. They could only agree. Any time All for One was involved it was going to get rough. Izuku then looked over at All Might. Master, when we find him you aren't going in alone. I will be entering with you or you won't be going at all. Izuku said. All Might protested. It's my job to finish him as your master. You shouldn't be fighting him. Not yet, All Might said as he stood up and looked at Izuku. Wrong. I'm the current wielder, meaning your duty ended. Also, that is what all of the past users did. Went off and died and didn't take help. If we both fight him we have better odds of winning since we both can use 100% of OFA until you lose what you have left. As such, we either both go in or you don't go in at all. Izuku stated in a firm voice. All Might asked if Izuku would go in alone. If you refuse to go in with me at the same time. Yes. I refuse to watch you die when you are no longer the current user and I am. It's my responsibility to end him. I have 90% of One for All under control and hopefully, by the time the fight happens, I will hit 100% and just keep growing, meaning I will be the same strength as you. Izuku stated, leaving no room for arguments. All Might just relent when Gran Torino sided with Izuku. Izuku thanked Gran but Gran still had words to say. Kid, the fight with All for One better not become your last fight. That promise with your brothers to die in a blaze of glory doesn't include a fight with him, so you better live past that day. Do you understand me? Gran Torino stated. Gran knew too well the fate of the users. He hated their fate to fight to the death with that ancient man. Izuku just nodded his head. 6. Well, who is going to help convince my mother to allow me to stay on the campus? Quote. Izuku said and they all laughed. Nezu said he would go and help convince her. The others suggested to come and help as well since they had a dinner set with the Midoriya home today anyway. As such, everyone got up and headed off to go to the Midoriya house. When Izuku walked in he was met with his mother and his brother's parents. Hey everyone, Izuku said as he knew this was going to be a long conversation. His brother's parents were told about One for All since Izuku had planned to tell his brothers anyway but never got the chance. With All for One back, they are all in equal danger since All for One may target them. Soon they explained the events of the day since it was all over the news. They then got to the conversation about All for One. Mom, All for One is alive, Izuku stated. She and the other parents froze. They knew what that meant. They knew that Izuku would have a fight to the death with him. They all just moved to him and hugged him. After a bit, They let go and sat down and had stopped preparing the food since they wanted to focus on this conversation. They talked about how they figured it out and that it wouldn't be surprising for the fight to happen in the next year or two with how activate All for One is appearing to be. All Might apologized to Inko since he had promised her that he was dead. I thought he was. I don't know how he survived having his head caved in. That should be impossible, but it appears not for him. All Might stated. Soon they went to the conversation about the dorms. I want to live on campus in the staff dorms so I can watch over the 1A and 1B students. The villains might show an interest in them since they survived the first attack and All Might is their direct teacher for foundational classes. I know this will cut the time we all have together down more in what might be my final years alive. But I can't let them come to harm, Izuku said with a few tears in his eyes. Inko just hugged her and said it was fine. He just needed to video call her as much as possible. As such, the night went on and everyone there had dinner together. The mood was somber since they knew the future would not be kind to them and that Izuku and All Might would have a higher chance of dying sooner than they all believed possible. They could only enjoy the silent night with the few waves of laughter that some people let out when they were talking to the others. 3rd POV 3. It's been about a week since the attack on the USJ. The media attempted to rake UA over the coals with the attack, but UA pushed back and called the media out on how they had a hand in the attack. It was amazing to watch. As one reporter asked what they will do in regards to their weak defenses and how they would respond in regards to the villains. Izuku struck back. All things are not 100% certain in life. Nothing is perfect. However, we will continue to move forward and build up our defenses of the school. We did anticipate a second attack on the school after the first one. As such, that is why I was sent with the first-year students to ensure their safety more, since we just couldn't cancel and keep canceling events if we didn't know for certain when they would attack. Izuku stated, and a reporter took the bait on the words first and the second attack and asked about what he meant. Ah yes, the attack on the USJ was actually their second one. The first one you media had a hand in. It was when you all came onto the campus setting the alarms off and consumed our attention, controlling you. This allowed one of the main villains to warp into our building and steal the schedule. So yes, the media played a large role in the villain's attack on UA and endangering our students. Thank you so much for that, since you all couldn't be proper human beings and leave our campus alone when you were told many times that day. Instead, you wanted a damning story that helped endangered our students' lives. Izuku stated with a cold smile on his face. The reporters tried to object, but Izuku just kept shutting them down by pointing out if they weren't crowded at the gate, then the villains wouldn't have had the chance to break into the building in the first place. 1. The reporters got silent quickly and let the press conference go forward. Izuku made sure that UA had streamed the press conference themselves so the public would see what happened unedited. It was amazing to read the comments later as the public bashed the media for aiding the villains in the attack on UA, and the public was supporting UA since no students got injured and there were minimal wounds on the hero's side. The public wasn't told about Izuku's injuries. Everyone was supporting UA more and more, unlike the villain's aim of damaging their reputation. 2. Soon the classes also started back up and it was time for the students to return. Izuku made sure to stop by 1A during one of their classes to show them that he was fine. He also was digging into anything that could be related to All for One since they knew he was now alive. Soon though, Izuku was going to go for lunch when he saw a large number of people outside the 1A doors. Izuku listened to the conversation and he was annoyed. He heard people talking about how the 1A students were arrogant just because they got attacked, and then there was the idiot blonde from 1B that has annoyed Izuku one too many times. Izuku decided to move in. I think that is enough, wouldn't you say? Izuku said as he walked up. Though he wasn't in his UA uniform or his hero outfit, so some didn't recognize him. Some asked who the hell he was and Izuku just smiled. Hello, I'm Fulcrum. Nice to meet you all, Izuku said with a cheer in his voice. The students paled a bit at who walked up to them. Now, I heard a lot of interesting comments. You will all leave this class alone or else you will be punished. This class didn't ask to be attacked by villains and you are all thinking that they act holier than thou for it. Well, guess what? Getting attacked and fighting for your life isn't fun. The villains had a monster that could kill All Might there and you think they enjoyed it from some of your comments. Leave now, Izuku said but stopped Nito Monoma. Izuku grabbed him by the ear and dragged him to Nezu's office. 2. Now, I told you to drop that damn toxic rivalry you tried starting, or if it was a complex you had that you needed to drop, but it seems you didn't listen to me. Nezu, I recommend a week of detention, and if he keeps going it will increase until the point we expel him. Izuku said to Nezu as they walked to the principal's office. The boy just looked pale as he had gotten dragged to the principal's office by his ear and was dragged past his class. Vlad King just shook his head when his student looked at him. Nezu agreed with the assessment and gave the boy detention for a week and warned him that it would rise to the level of expulsion if he kept on his current path. Izuku just watched the boy leave and shook his head. I don't get what his problem is with 1A. It doesn't make sense. I could understand some jealousy of being in 1B compared to 1A, but the level he takes it goes too far. Izuku stated. Nezu agreed and said he would look into it. 3. Soon the classes got back on track and they were told that they would have the sports festival in 2 weeks. Izuku was not planning on being present for the third years or the first years. He had told his master and the school that he was planning to skip his sports festival and just train during the entire time. Izuku wanted to be as prepared as he could for the upcoming fight with All for One whenever it came. As such, that is how Izuku spent the next 2 weeks and trained non-stop. Though he did take a break on the day of the sports festival and turned on the TV to watch the first years. It was interesting to say since Kachan was the year representative and his speech was one of a kind when he declared that he would go on to become number 1. 3. The first round was an obstacle course and Kachan came in first with Todoroki coming in second place. He flipped to the third year and there were comments on why there were no hero students this year, and the announcer stated that there was only one hero course student who was devoting his time to training instead of attending. The announcement also stated that the school approves of it due to the dedication that the student has been putting in and was willing to meet his needs since no one could move up to the hero course during the third year regardless of where they placed anyway. As such, it was mostly just an advertisement shown for the business and support course students and good old fun for the general students. The school didn't want them to work too hard and just focus on making connections. Izuku then switched back to the first year events. They were currently doing a round of cavalry battles and Bakugo really knew how to dominate the field. He was keeping people away and even used his team's quirks to his advantage as he flew around with his explosives but kept the tape from Zero on his body to pull him back to the team before he touched the ground. Overall he watched the fights go on but noticed that Todoroki wasn't using his flames. This concerned Izuku for many reasons, but most importantly if Todoroki went out in the field like that he was asking to be killed. That was an entire side of his body that is left open to getting attacked, and what happens if someone's in danger and they can only be saved by the fire side of his quirk? He will have no control over it and risks killing the person needing to be saved or worst, killing his own team. Izuku did see that Bakugo did end up forcing Todoroki to use it for a split second before he cut it off though. The event continued and soon it was time for the individual matches. Izuku pulled his phone out and sent a text message to Bakugo wishing him good luck but reminding him to keep his temper in check since it was on national TV. Bakugo sent back a short explosive emoji which Izuku just chuckled at. Though as the matches for the individual tournament was going on, Izuku received an alert from the All Might Agency. Another hero was taken down by Stain and it was Ida's older brother. Shit, that isn't going to go well for the younger brother and he might snap and do something stupid. Stain is really becoming an issue that needs to be stopped. Izuku muttered out loud. Izuku left the room he was in and went and got a laptop and started to dig into anything they had on Stain and looked for other cases that might have been missed. He also kept an eye on the festival as well, and as he looked up he saw Bakugo and Todoroki fighting and he was surprised. Bakugo had forced Todoroki to use his fire. Izuku could hear something being yelled about it was his power and not someone else's. It was at that moment that Todoroki lit on fire and the explosion from both sides caused a flash of light and a lot of destruction. Izuku focused and wondered who won. The dust soon settled and Bakugo was declared the winner since Todoroki had 1 foot out while Bakugo stayed in. That is how Bakugo had taken first place and won the gold medal. Izuku was happy for Bakugo and sent him a text message congratulating him. 6. After Izuku finished watching the events after the medals were given out, he started looking over his notes again. Izuku believed he found a connection to a long list of cases that are likely related to the Stain case that no one knew about. These cases belong to a vigilante that disappeared roughly the same time Stain made his appearance. Well, if that isn't concerning, Izuku thought. He read what notes they had on the vigilante's quirk and had a general idea behind Stain's quirk, though it was all based on the idea that Stain and the vigilante were the same people, which Izuku was hoping he was right. Soon a week passed and Izuku was asked to help with the hero names. For the most part, everything went fine and Izuku got Todoroki to use an actual hero name instead of his first name. So he went with duality while Bakugo's name included murder. Izuku shook his head and suggested Ground Zero, which he went with. Izuku did notice the way that Iida Tenya was looking and only grew more concerned. Izuku decided to go talk to All Might about his plans during the first year's internships. As such, that is how he found himself in a lounge with All Might drinking tea. "My boy, I was thinking of what we could do during the first year internships since I will be free to move around," All Might stated, and Izuku butted in. "Actually, about that, I already have some plans and wondered if you wanted to come or not. We need to deal with Stain. I also have concerns about Iida Tenya and him doing something stupid like going after Stain. As such, I plan to go to Hosu during their entire internship time to make sure he doesn't try anything stupid, but also to track down Stain to arrest him," Izuku said, and All Might sat there thinking. He then nodded his head and agreed. That would be a good idea for Izuku to do. "I can come in my skinny form as well and stay relatively nearby in the city, so if something does happen I can bulk up and get to your location if you press the beacon," All Might stated. Izuku nodded his head at that and agreed with that plan. They talked a bit more and talked about Izuku's current progress. 2. As it stands I can use 100% but it hurts. I can use 95% without hurting myself, so I am close to getting to that 100% mark and pushing further to grow the power. I'm confident in my ability to deal with almost anyone that isn't All for One since he can fight us at 100%. Stain shouldn't be an issue overall in power, but it's the experience that he has over me that will present an issue," Izuku said. All Might nodded his head. "Indeed, experience is something you can only gain by doing it. You have gained quite a lot, but still compared to the really troublesome characters you will be lacking compared to them. All you can do is keep moving forward and doing what you can do," All Might stated. They did talk about Izuku's fan base a bit and how they think he will rank once the next board hits. They are predicting for him to be in the top 10 likely due to how fast his fan base has grown. Izuku already had a decent size before, but the longer time moves the more he gets due to his connection to All Might being out in the open. Soon, the conversations came to an end and Izuku decided to go make a stop at Nezu's office. 1. Come in, Nezu said. Nezu asked what Izuku needed and he asked if he has received the requests on where the 1A students would be going. Nezu did, since Aizawa had just dropped them off. Izuku went through them and found Iida Tenya's request. "Ask I feared. He's going to Hosu," Izuku said, and Nezu made the connections right there and then. Nezu asked Izuku if he should cancel it, but Izuku said they had no real evidence to stop it. "Anyway, I plan to go to Hosu with All Might. He's going in his skinny form and will move around the city, so he will be nearby in the event of anything. I am aiming to track and arrest Stain before he changes cities again," Izuku stated, and Nezu nodded his head. They played a few rounds of chess as they talked about some different things. The dorms have already been built and some of the hero students were already moving onto the campus. All of the remaining ones would be living on campus after the internships end as well. Izuku has enjoyed being closer to the memorial site more often since he could sit at it more often. That is how he found himself the day before the internship started. He was sitting at the memorial when Bakugo walked up to him. "Hey Aniki," Bakugo called out. Bakugo called out again since Izuku didn't respond, and this snapped him out of his thoughts. "Sorry, Kachan, I was thinking," Izuku said as he looked down at the memorial. Bakugo walked over and sat next to Izuku and relaxed into his side like he would do when he was a young child. "Aniki, could you tell me about them? You never talked about them at home," Bakugo stated, and Izuku tensed a bit, which Bakugo felt, and before he could take his words back Izuku spoke up. It's alright. It's just hard to talk about them without remembering the final days. Kachan, do me a favor. I think you are already making a small group in your class. I think you guys called it the Bakugo Squad. Izuku asked, and Bakugo just turned his head away and scoffed. Izuku just laughed a bit. Do me a favor, and if they are friends that you really care about, then hold on to them with everything you got. Enjoy your time with them, since in this field you don't know when it will all come to an end. I will do everything I can to ensure you all don't go through that pain before you graduate this school. Do you understand me? Izuku said as he held Bakugo close in a tight grip. Bakugo's eyes widened a bit and said he understood. Izuku then started to talk about his two brothers and how they were going to challenge the entire world and change things. Bakugo sat there and listened to everything and absorbed it all. This was the first time that his Aniki had willing talked about these people, since he never talked about it when he was at the house, nor did his Aunt Inko talk about them, but Bakugo knew there were two families that always visited the house. Bakugo made the assumption that they were the parents of the two other boys and finally understood why they were always around. The pain bonded the families together, and Izuku represented everything that was left of their children that remained in this world. 4. Bakugo thanked Izuku for telling him about them and promised he would hold on to his friends the best he could. Bakugo asked Izuku to come back to the 1A dorms to visit with them all, since they all wanted to hang out with him. Izuku looked shocked, and Bakugo hated that fact. He hated the fact that Izuku was alone so much, since he had lost those that he held the closest to him outside of his aunt. Izuku agreed to come back to the dorms, and Izuku put the fire out at the memorial site before they headed back. Kachan, can you and 1A do me a favor? Izuku asked, and Bakugo said sure, but Izuku decided against asking it. Just ignore my words for now. I'll ask the favor in the future when the time comes. Izuku stated. Bakugo didn't like that. For some reason, he knew that favor wasn't going to be one he wanted to complete, but would have no choice but to. 3rd Pav. 13. The day of the internships arrived, and the students all got onto a train and left after talking to Eraserhead. Izuku came out of his hiding, and Aizawa looked at him. Your guess is likely right. Iida is going to do something stupid. I have a mission I have to go on, so please keep an eye out for the idiot and we can punish him when he gets back. Aizawa stated. Izuku nodded his head at Aizawa's statement and soon got onto the next train. Izuku would need to take a second train at a different location and would arrive about 2 hours after Iida. Izuku was going to be staying in a hotel near the area and would do his patrol in the afternoon, since all of Stain attacks have happened in the afternoon or night. Izuku was sitting on the bus and recalled the dream he had last night. It was a dream from One for All. The first user arrived before him and showed memories of the past. Izuku could walk around inside of One for All now, since he had so much control of the quirk. Hello, 9th, it's been a while since you've been here. Last time was when 7th passed her quirk to you, stated the first user. Izuku looked at the first user and asked why he was here and why did he see those memories. The first user was silent before he decided to speak. Everything happens sometimes for a reason. As a user of One for All, you are destined to fight my brother. I never thought I would condemn so many people to their deaths due to passing the quirk. Tell me, do you regret taking the quirk knowing you will be walking towards death? Asked the first user. Izuku was silent at the question but answered within seconds. I have no regrets. If I didn't have the quirk, would I have been there to stop the Nomu? No. So many of them likely would have died in that event. Do I fear my death? Yes. Do I fear walking towards it? No. I am proud to be the 9th user of One for All. Izuku said with determination in his eyes. The first person nodded their heads. You do realize that even with my brother injured, he is still strong enough to fight you on equal terms or even overpower you, right? He got injured by All Might due to letting his guard down, since none of the wielders before could injure him, and that costed him. He won't make that mistake with you, stated the first user, and Izuku paled a bit at the power that All for One has even while being injured. Fighting isn't it? Asked the first user. Izuku though felt there was a true meaning behind this meeting, that the first user wasn't saying something that needed to be said. The smile that the first user had on was sad, as if he knew something that Izuku didn't, that something sad was going to happen. 3. What are you not saying? You know something, don't you? Izuku asked. The first user nodded his head. Indeed I do, and I first want to say I am sorry. I am sorry that you were condemned to die, stated the first user, and Izuku's eyes widened at that. Izuku wondered if the first user didn't see any hope of Izuku winning and didn't have faith in him. The first user, sensing these thoughts, corrected Izuku's misunderstanding. It's not that I don't have faith in you. It's the fact that I know you too well that you will accept my offer, which will result in your death, because you will do everything you can to stop him, which includes dying for it, stated the first user as he shook his head slowly with a sad smile on his face. Izuku was shocked and wondered what the offer was. One for All has hit the singularity point. The theory is that quirks that passed this point will go under some form of reset. From what we can agree on is that this means that One for All will weaken in the next user before regrowing, since it will have expelled some of the quirks to make room for more power. This means that All for One will have an entire generation of a user to do as he pleases, since it will revert back to the strength of around the sixth user, which wasn't really strong enough to fight him, stated the first user, and Izuku was in shock. Then the first user started to talk again. He talked about what his offer was. My offer is the knowledge of how to perform what I would call the final smash of One for All. It would result in almost all of the power of One for All going through your body, but the problem is that it would likely kill you. As you saw back in the USJ, you went above 100%. This is when you access the entire pool and start pulling more energy out than your body can handle, which damages you. It's similar to how you controlled One for All before at lower amounts, but in this case, instead of hitting the 100% output that One for All provides and naturally expands over time to fit your body, you destroy the output flow control on One for All and everything comes out, which has around an 80% chance of killing you at our current estimates, stated the first user. Izuku was in shock. A move that likely would kill him but would have the highest odds of wiping out All for One's entire body in one move. Izuku knew the first user was right. If Izuku saw no other way, he wouldn't hesitate to use the move. If it meant keeping everyone safe, he would use it. See what I mean by condemning you to die? I know you will use this, and the other users don't want to offer you this knowledge, but they can't stop me. Only I have it and can pass it on as the first user. One for All provided me the knowledge when I first appeared here. Do you hate me now that I am condemning you to die? Asked the first user, and Izuku responded with a no without hesitating. I can't hate you. I could understand the other's reluctance to give it to me. If All Might knew about this, he would be pissed, to say the least. Izuku said as he chuckled, thinking about his master knowing about this. The first user asked if he was going to tell the eighth user, but Izuku said he wasn't going to. He didn't need his master worrying about it. As I told him, stopping All for One is my job now, not his. His job is the symbol of peace and being a teacher. If he knew, he would without a doubt stop me from getting close to All One for to fight him, Izuku stated, and the first user nodded his head. Soon the first user started to transfer all of the knowledge of the final smash to Izuku. It wasn't really a smash at all. It was more of a large explosion of power, eradicating everything it can. The first user warned that Izuku would need to get All for One far in the air before using the move, or else he would destroy and kill anyone near him. 18. Izuku finished remembering about the dream he had. He did a good job hiding the new information from his master and anyone else. They didn't need to know of his likely death. To think that the first user still says that All for One is equal or stronger to me at 100% of One for All before I am able to start expanding it, which will take a lot of time, which we don't have. We also don't know of any of the quirks he gained from the last fight to now, which is troublesome. Izuku thought. Izuku had some grim thoughts in his mind about his possible death. He had already started writing a will that he needs to finish. There were some personal letters in it to be given out to some people. However, Izuku knew he needed to focus his mind back on his objective since he now arrived in Hosu. Before anyone could spot him, he got off the train and got onto some buildings to hide from the public eye. He didn't need people alerting Stain of his location here in Hosu, or else he might run. Soon Izuku got to his hotel and checked in. After changing his outfit, he got to work and started to scout the city. 2. Though nothing really happened and he avoided criminals or taking people in if they didn't harm anyone in front of him. He was focusing on finding Stain and ensuring Iida didn't do something stupid. However, it seems about a late afternoon on day 3 his luck ran out and Iida did something stupid in a crisis. Izuku had alerted All Might, who was at the hotel, about the amount of Nomus running around the city, but he also warned him that he had to go find Iida since he ran away from his mentor for the internship. All Might said he should be able to handle it all with the other heroes, and word was that Endeavor was also in the city. Izuku knew Endeavor was likely after Stain as well, but Izuku needed to find Iida. Soon Izuku got running after alerting All Might, and about 10 minutes later of searching he found Iida about to get killed. Izuku charged up to 100% for a split second and burst off in a blinding speed and socked Stain right in the face at around 35%, hoping it was enough to knock him out and not kill him. Iida, I will deal with you when we get out of this situation. Can you move? Izuku asked. Sir, no I can't. I got hit by his quirk I think. Iida, who used his first name as his hero name like an idiot, said. Izuku groaned and saw Native was down on the ground. He quickly moved Native to Iida's location since he was still lucid a bit. I'm assuming you got hit as well? Izuku asked as he looked over the wounds and got ready to retreat with them, but as he started to pull them up a blade came flying at him and he had to drop them and doge. Guess you won't let me get them out of here, will you? Izuku stated, and Stain appeared with a bruise on his face. No, I won't, though I must admit I'm surprised you were focused on getting them out instead of capturing me. Stain asked. I admit I am here to capture you, but they come first. I don't know if you hit any major blood vessels and there is a risk of them bleeding to death, so got to get them medical care hopefully first before kicking your ass. Izuku said with a bright smile as he got in front of the 2 down heroes. However, it seems I will be forced to take you out first before I can get them out of here. Izuku said as he charged up to 60% and bounced off the walls. He couldn't use much more since even at 60% he was making small holes in the walls and had to be careful not to destroy the walls. Stain tried throwing knives at Izuku, but Izuku kept dodging them due to his speed. Izuku just kept this up for about 3 minutes as he got closer and closer to Stain to do quick attacks before backing off. Based on the information he had, he couldn't get too close for too long to his main swords since he was quicker with them and could get some of his blood to drink, which is how his quirk works, or so Izuku thinks, but he doesn't want to confirm it. 5. Why won't you attack me directly instead of doing hit and runs? Stain stated. Izuku rolled his eyes, because I got a good idea of how your quirk works and I'm not trying to let you use it. If my theories are right, you need blood to activate your quirk, though I don't know how long it lasts before it wears off. Izuku said, and Stain smirked. Correct, good guess. Stain said as he charged towards the downed heroes, which forced Izuku to fight him directly to keep him away from the downed heroes. Then Izuku noticed Iida get up. Iida, get Native out of here. Izuku yelled, but Iida was an idiot and charged Stain, which shocked them both. Are you an idiot? Yelled both Stain and Izuku at the same time. Izuku had knocked Iida back before Stain could slice him with his blade, but Stain did throw a blade and it landed in Iida's arm. Iida, get Native and leave right now. I will deal with you later. Do not disobey me. Izuku said as he peaked his power, which created a large feeling of power that made Iida back away in fear. He obeyed and grabbed Native and ran off. 4. Your power. Your presence feels just like All Might. I can see why you are his protege. You remind me of him a lot. No one else had the right to be called his protege. Stain yelled. Though Izuku corrected that last part. Actually 2 more have that right, Izuku said, and this confused Stain. He asked for exploitation and Izuku gave a brief explanation as he looked for an opening to strike. Know the 3 Misfits tragedy? Izuku asked, and Stain said he did, and that 2 of a 3 team died but no names were released. I was the 3rd person and I requested no names being released. I didn't want my brothers in all, but blood gets used for political bullshit. They were All Might's proteges alongside me, but they suffered an ill fate that day. I always think they kept my soul going from the other side so I could keep pushing forward. Izuku said as he saw a chance to attack, and did so as Stain was a shock from the story, which made him back away as Izuku came charging. Izuku was able to get close enough and secured one of Stain's blades from him, so he was down 1 main blade. Stain cursed and glared at Izuku. As they were staring each other down, Stain asked for the names. Izuku gave them. Red Demon and Domovoy. We 3 made up the 3 Misfits group. We had plans to open our own agency and everything. I'm not allowed to join them until I die of old age or in a battle of glory, so this is where you are stopped, Stain," Izuku said as he blasted off at 70% and created a decent size hole in the ground from him blasting off. Stain was shocked at the speed, and then Izuku changed his direction in midair, shocking Stain even more as Izuku used float to go right around Stain and attacked from the side. Stain took the hit right into his side and got blasted into the wall. Izuku capitalized on the moment, but Stain reacted since Izuku only used 35% again since he didn't want to kill Stain. Stain came down with the sword and Izuku bent around it and landed an uppercut to his jaw, knocking him out due to the shock it had on the brain. Izuku breathed in the fresh air as he took his mask off. Damn, he was experienced. He withstood so many hits at 35%. That's the problem of going higher of the risk of death, and he withstood 35% in multiple hits. Izuku tied Stain up and removed all the blades he found. He then gathered them all up and carried them in one bag he found and then carried Stain on his shoulder. Stain came to and noticed he was tied. "Please don't move. I don't know how many bones I likely broke, and I don't need you risking them hitting an organ or something before I get you to a hospital," Izuku said. Stain looked at Izuku in the eye from where he could see inside. "You truly are a good hero. Even caring about the villain after the fact, though that kid is a fake hero," Stain said. Izuku shook his head slightly, which confused Stain. "Too, I admit he was stupid and did something really bad, but he can still be an amazing hero. He is just a kid that hasn't had to go through experiences enough to learn from. That is why I got my teaching license and helped their class out to try and correct things like this. It's why I came and followed him on his internship, since I had a feeling he would do something like this, but we had no proof to stop him. He is still young and can be transformed by Ua, since good teachers are there like Eraserhead, All Might, Principal Nezu, and many more that dedicate themselves to making better heroes than the last generation," Izuku said, and Stain was silent. They soon came out and found Native and Iida. "Why aren't you at a hospital ready? I was fighting for like 10 minutes. Izuku asked, and Iida glared at Stain and wanted to say something to him, but Izuku stopped him. "Stop glaring at him and answer my question. My patience with you is thin right now," Izuku said. Iida explained that the emergency services are still dealing with the Nomus around town but would be arriving soon. Izuku nodded his head. "Iida, I really hope you understand where you went wrong. You went out and tried to be a vigilante and murder someone. If you succeeded, it would make you no better than Stain, but you didn't, so there is some hope of you coming back from this. But I want to address the real problem. The fact that you saw no issue with taking on someone that took your brother down. Do you realize what that would have done to your family? To your brother? He would have blamed himself for it and could have led to him becoming depressed or worse," Izuku stated, and at that moment Iida's eyes widened in the realization of what he did. If Izuku didn't come, then he would be dead and his family would blame themselves. "I see you figured out where you went wrong. We will talk more once everything is cleared up, but you might face some punishment after this if the police decided to not doing anything about you," Izuku said as he heard the police sirens, and All Might appeared only a few seconds after the police did, which Izuku was glad for. Izuku handed Stain off to the police and told them that he needs to go to a villain hospital due to wounds and likely heavy broken bones. To be continued. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and now we will see you in the next video.